stage. Everybody pulls his weight. Cheer on the sound and great. Knows what
Welcome to Early Watch Wednesday. I am your host, Dead Horse. I have some links out there. I'll probably get a couple co-hosts here in a minute. How's everyone doing? Let's see, we got it up there on gun channels. So anyone that's going to listen to this, just so you know, we have a room over there on gun channels, an Early Watch room. So feel free to go over there. It's posted on the front page of gun channels. You can hop in the Early Watch room. You might have to refresh it a couple times. You open up the bottom right corner that says chat rooms, and that's where the chat will auto refresh. And you can just sit there and type. And if you go to the full website on your phone, both on gun channels by clicking full website, and then in the top right corner on your browser, clicking the three dots and going to requesting, full website. You can watch it on your phone the exact same way on YouTube, and not only that, but unlike YouTube, you can put it into the background on your phone, gun channels, while YouTube's playing on gun channels, and do other stuff on your phone, like shop Amazon or Brownells, or multitask, right? Be on Instagram and listening to gun channels in the background on your phone, and without paying for YouTube Red, right, to be able to do that. Yeah, usually you'd have to have YouTube Red or YouTube Premium to be able to run it in the background like that. But here at Gun Channels, we're pro freedom, so we supply that for you. So that's the good thing about using Gun Channels to, listen to these YouTube gun shows. And not only that, but the freedom to post links and talk with freedom, and not have YouTube automatically like block your comment, like, oh, we recognize this might be like hate speech, so we automatically blocked it for you. So that stuff doesn't happen on over there. Oh, I hear somebody. Dano, how's it going?
Good morning, everyone. Morning, Dead Horse.
Good morning. I was just explaining for anyone tuning in early, or who listens to this later, how to use gun channels and the advantages of using gun channels and listening to YouTube on these YouTube shows on it, like being able to run it in the background and being able to multitask on your phone, and then the freedom to post links and freedom of speech over there in the chat rooms.
Absolutely. I'm sure I didn't quite hear what it is, but I'll just to dig a little deeper on what you just said. We have a number of members, and membership is free. It doesn't cost anything except an actual email address, which is actually you use just to verify that it is a real account. But we have people that listen in while they're working. That they can put an earbud in one ear and do what they need to do at work, because they, have jobs that allow them to do that. You also can be as deep into, if you want to, what I'll call nerd out, so to speak, on whatever aspect of firearms that you happen to be into. So for me, that's freedom in general and the Second Amendment in particular. So I dig out, as I come across various articles out there on things that are happening either in states or on the national level, and I post them on the main page of Gun Channels. Now, any member can do exactly what I just said. It's not like, oh, I'm a special member, so only I can do it, as it is on many websites where that's just where the people post who are in charge to put their stuff. No, anybody, you find something about competition shooting, and you would like to share that with other people.
Sometimes I come across the video and I might have seen it before, I might not have, but I'm just like, oh, you know what? This is like an 8-year-old video. I bet you a lot of people have never, don't even know who this channel or this guy is, or have seen the content in this video. And I'll throw that up there on the Gun Channel's front page just to share it with people. And then a lot of times I'll get comments underneath that like, oh wow, like I've never heard of this channel before, like good find, or or like, oh, this was a good video or funny or whatever, so.
Yeah, in fact, not just spinning on that directly. There's been more than once that I've rewatched a good video that I saw a couple years back to refresh my mind because it was such an important topic. And the one that comes to mind is on what's called the OODA loop, which is basically a decision-making cycle that we all go through, whether we realize it or not. We're all going through it, but it has to do with the how quickly we get through it to get to positive action, or how we can get hung up in it and delay that action, or maybe have the action be the wrong action. But it has to do with that decision making cycle. And so, I've found over years, there are some, relatively speaking, short but very people who are much better explaining things than I am, who can explain that, because it affects everyone who's into self-defense, whether it's martial arts, whether it's you just want to be more self-aware out in the world, whether it's you're into firearms. It affects everyone. Driving your car to work, it affects everyone.
Yes, it does. And I like to be able to, the ability just to be able to share stuff over there and then talk about it. Like, we have the ability to, not only like to share a video over there on the front page, but then literally pretty much be able to have a discussion, almost kind of like a forum-based discussion underneath that video, and talk to each other about it, or ask questions, or point out things about the video, and or whatever the post may be, right? And so I like that ability, and then just to be able to actually have a discussion about stuff, right?
Yeah, and yet, just for comparison's sake, we look at YouTube, where you cannot post a link or a URL to something, in their text chat. Well, over on gun channels, we have text chats, like YouTube has, except that we don't have all the restrictions that YouTube has. So if you want to post something about guns and has the word gun in the title, you can do that. You want to post something about reloading, you can do that. And it doesn't require any. There are no special members, and that only have the power to do that. Anybody can do it. That's a legitimate member. And I think that's a great thing, that internal chat system. Again, or like this morning, I woke up and I turned on gun channels, and you had sent me, through this one of the messaging system, which is a private messaging system, the link to hop in this morning's show. As an easier way to communicate, rather than necessarily having to get everybody's phone numbers or get everybody's email or that sort of thing. It's just a very easier way to.
Well, and that's how you know who's actually on, who might actually be able to participate in these chats too, is by, like you can see people over there on gun channels and say like, oh, there's 7 people over there right now, and and maybe one of these people would like to join. And when you send out emails, there's various emails, like who knows what, right? Like what kind of percentage of response you might get back, versus on gun channels, like you'll know like, oh, there's these people are physically, like they're on right now, right?
Right. Yeah. It'll give a status of people who have signed in, and whether they're, they've signed in recently, or whether, they're signed in, but they don't seem to be changing from page to page. So they might have gone radio silent. But you could also, leave message is in there. So when the person does come online, there's a little flashy thingy, that goes on, or a little color box that comes up that's pretty obvious to see. I think for me it is, to tell me, oh, a Dead Horse or somebody else has left me a message. I need to take a look at that. A new message that I have not yet at least looked at. So, and that's another really nice feature. I mean, there are, and we're just starting, we're only scratching the surface, and then you go to content creators, and about all the various aspects of firearms. And if you think of it as walking into a mall, there are multiple levels and many stores on every level. And there may be stores at different ends of the mall that cover what you might think, well, it's kind of the same thing. And it may be, but no two people have the exact same opinion on everything. So, you can get 2 shows that are similar, or multiple shows that are similar, but yet are indeed different, as well as unique shows that are kind of one of a kind thing. So I realized I just stopped there because I realized I was running low on oxygen.
But yeah, there is. I mean, and there's so much to do over there. Like, there's a place to, put your photos. You want to have a photo album of, something that's like maybe more private and more secure than using what's that website called where everyone puts their photos online, like kind of like not Instagram, but like there's another one that Photo Bucket,
Photo
right?
bucket, okay.
And there are similar ones to that, right? So something maybe more secure than Instagram or Photo Bucket, where you have more privacy to, block people and like keep it just for you, or share it with just select people, right? And have, and stuff like that. But whether it's an album or, basically you kind of have the ability to set up your own page over there many different ways, right? Like almost like your own little website, almost, when it really comes down to your actual specific profile page and everything. You could pretty much set that up as like almost like your own little what's the word I'm looking for? Like profile type of website, like about me, like LinkedIn or stuff like that, right?
Yep.
Let's see here. So moving into some 2A news. So I don't have much for today, but I got 3 stories that I want to talk about at least, and then we'll see what Dano has. So the first one is New Zealand's Prime Minister, I guess, came over here. Her name's Jacinda Ardern. She had some interview on CNN, of course, right? And so this girl's from New Zealand, Prime Minister, and she can't understand why we don't pass stronger gun laws after the mass shooting events. And this was all on CNN, and um, like she uses like Australia as a reference of like what they did, right? But without referencing like how all the rapes and murders and violent crime and how everything went up like that, and how there's still gun crime over there and murders with guns, and, it's just now innocent people don't have a way to defend themselves.
Right. You know what I always find ironic, and I heard this from someone else the other day, so this is not an original thought of my own, is why do we expect that people that may even speak the same language as we do, English, that is, but live thousands of miles away in a different country with different cultures, different problems, different solutions to their unique problems that we might not even have over here, and then suddenly expect these people to have some unique insight as to American issues and American problems with the cultures that we have.
Yeah, New Zealand is like a tiny little island, right? It's basically like a boat. They basically live on a boat. So like they basically live on a boat in water. And this is the same. So if you don't follow like World 2A news, but after that mosque shooting, right? There that happened.
Yep.
This prime minister, this Jacinda Ardern, I don't even care if I'm saying her name right. She banned assault rifles and high capacity magazines. Days after, just a couple days after, boom, banned them. And so now that she did it, she's like, oh look, I did it here in New Zealand. Like I can't understand why America doesn't, because I don't know if New Zealand had a Second Amendment or
I was just going to speak to that exact same thing. The ignorance on their part that we have identical governmental systems. We have rights that are given to us as we are born as free American citizens that their citizens do not have. They have privileges. We have rights. And there is a world of difference between the two. And what they're simply doing is expounding upon the fact of how ignorant they are in regards to the difference between a privilege and a right. Simply, our Constitution delegates the limitations of our government, not the power of what our government can do, but what our government cannot do. And that's a pivotal difference. They cannot
You know,
impinge on our freedoms of firearms. Now, there's some more details there, but I'm just saying that's an example. They cannot
no, I agree.
impede on our right to free speech. Where over in the North, to our Canadian neighbors, I was listening to an interview yesterday of someone who was sued and lost the suit for $1.5 million. Now, the gentleman is a reporter. He was reporting on a Islamic mosque that when they were supposedly doing, for that particular religion, and it does vary from religion to religion, the seventh day or the day of rest is Saturday, not Sunday. He repeatedly went there over the entire weekend, Friday through Sunday, looking for where are all these members that are donating all this tax-free money, because on the tax rolls, which even a non-for-profit has to submit to prove that they are indeed non-for-profit, that nobody's showing up.
He
Where
makes a
is
good
the
point out there.
millions of dollars going? Where is it coming from? It is merely a front for outside agencies outside of the Canadian government to funnel money into Canada to support their various programs of ideology.
Echo makes a good point out there that they're not citizens, they're subjects, and that's a big difference.
Yes, and again, we expect these subjects to have some special insight into our government, where they have privileges, we have rights. Two different countries with two different unique sets of issues and problems, and somehow we think, oh, they have the special sauce, that's going to change everything.
And then, oh, go ahead, Dano.
No, I'm drinking coffee, so you may mistake a coffee noise for something else.
So getting off that subject, because I really don't want to talk about New Zealand and this anti-gun prime minister, because like Dano nailed the point right on the head. He really did. Getting into some tragic news, but I think it just it needs to be mentioned that let's see, what's the best way to go about this? So 25-year-old Linda Arrington and her boyfriend, 43-year-old Antonio Dancer, are being held in a Madison County jail on charges including negligent homicide. So what happened was a 3-year-old toddler found a gun at his home in Tennessee, and he fatally shot himself in the head while his mother and her boyfriend were doing drugs in the other room. And
And just in the subject line, you've given 80% of what we need to know. And the other 20% is important, but 80% of what we need to know is already in the title.
exactly. And so it's just it's kind of be like the thing that I'm seeing, it was like thrown out as like a really anti-gun thing, but you gotta, they kind of fail to mention until you get to the fine print that like, oh, like these weren't even like law-abiding gun owners, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, make sure you keep your guns locked up if you're in the other room doing heroin with your significant other. I guess is the moral of that story. And then this is one that I wanted you to talk about, Dano, is the John Hopkins University one. Free the free gun violence prevention course that launches to educate young activists.
Yes. I'm busy here also working on the side trying to throw in some links for some other potential things. All right. Let me go ahead and toggle on over to that one. At first I just want to point out something unique about the URL or the link title itself. It's from nprillinois.org. That's the source, and that may give you a hint as to a potential slant that they might be having. And this was just published 2 days ago on May 13th. In the URL it says free gun violence prevention course launches educate young activist. That is, if you don't smell a little something there, it's like, oh, they're changing gun activists, as in like they make up the student makes up their mind on a particular issue, and then they're teaching them how to be active on that issue. That's what that implies, but that is not what this is. The title should be is more like free gun violence prevention, and in parentheses, gun control courses launched to educate young activists. And let me scroll down just a touch. And the idea that, let me just read a select portion here. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University are hoping, which means they're the ones that are going to be in charge of this, a major university, to capitalize, meaning make money, on student-led gun safety movement by offering a free online course which begins Monday to teach academic research and strategies they say are the best weapon to curb gun violence. And again, we've already explored what angle. They're not looking for gun violence answers. They're looking for gun control answers. Again, going back to reading it, gun violence experts put together the course, gun violence experts or gun control experts. That's me. Anyway, together after hundreds of thousands of people, many of them students, marched in our lives past year. That must have been the name of our march for calling for tighter gun controls. Following the shooting in Parkland and youth advocacy we noticed there was a gap in knowledge, said blah, 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 director of the Center for Gun Policy and Research and one of the core lecturers of the online course. It's called Reducing Gun Violence in America, Evidence for Change. And the course is aimed at high school and college age people, but it's open to anyone. So you can literally go from, oh, I have a GED, or I don't even know how I have a high school degree, but I have a college certificate, which is not the same as a degree or something else like that. But it's something else that legitimizes that person has, which they don't really need to do a whole lot other than sit back and watch the number of videos that they're required, to watch. They even, in this article that's supposed to be about education, again, tilt their hand as far as what their angle on this is when I read the following quote, and sort of push back against some of the claims you hear, like, oh, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, end of quote. I mean, that tells you everything, again, you need to know about what they are trying to accomplish and where they are coming from. I mean, they're not even hiding it as to what this really is. And they use, again, statistics as far as number of people that were fatally shot in 2017, that include suicides, that include the all sorts of things.
Can I just say something?
Yes, go right ahead.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the educational industrial complex.
Yes, and I'll say one other thing, and then I'm going to jump right on what you just said. And that about halfway through it says they hope to attract 20,000 registrants this year. That is their goal, and it's free. So people just have to sit back and go click, 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 until they get to the end, and boom, you've got a certificate.
Yeah, and this is something else to throw on my resume.
Something that I've said before, and I'll say it again because I truly believe it, is that on the gun rights side, we have lost the battle of mind control of our youth. And I don't want to mind control of our youth, but the other side does.
Oh, I don't think so. No, I don't think that's true.
Well, let me, and that's fine. Just give me a little time to try to fetter out, some of the details as to why I believe this. And it's okay if we have different opinions. And that's the great part of gun channels, is we can have two guys like Dead Horse and myself that believe in guns and freedom, yet that doesn't mean we agree on everything, and that's okay. But we allow each other to speak out what we have to say. But anyway, getting back on topic, is that we have allowed over the past, I'm going to estimate 30 years, but it could be 40 years or slightly longer, for the public education system to be taken over by liberal-minded teachers, liberal-minded administrators.
Hippies.
Okay. I won't just necessarily disagree with that, but not all hippies have long hair and a purple van with big flowers on it. I mean, many of them are driving a Prius with a polo shirt and Dockers or something, to that effect. And maybe at the high school level, they might even have purple hair to fit in with the cool kids, because that's what teachers are all about. But we've given up the children's privilege of an education. It is a privilege. It is not a right. And substituted courses that actually would help them learn about how to avoid some of the difficult lessons in life, and inserted programs like about the rights of the LGBT XYZ WXLPTMY community. All throughout the curriculum, it has been watered down. The standards have been lowered, and the lowering of the standards comes directly from the federal government. And it sounds like I'm going off on a tangent, but I just need to touch on this one thing in regards to making individual schools look. The administrators and the teachers needing their schools to look better than they actually are, because their failure rate is so massively high that if the general public truly understood how badly our public schools are failing our children, that we would have at least a near riot on the parent side, if they truly understood how we have abandoned a proper public school education to our children, and why suddenly at the end of a high school, after 12 years, they're still not, they're no more fit for a full-time job that actually pays a living wage than they were 5 years prior to that in 8th or 7th grade. Now I'll turn it back to you.
Now, I'll agree with that 100%. That our educational system has been under attack in a covert war called communism. And it basically started with a bunch of like socialist hippies reading Karl Marx and stuff like that, and then realizing that the youth is the key to the future, and if they can get into our educational system and weasel their way in there. See, like back in like the 40s and 50s, I mean, like, and so you're a communist, we'd have trials and stuff. I mean, like, that was like a serious thing. But nowadays it's like, oh, you could be a communist and want to destroy America and want to brainwash their children, and that's okay because you're allowed to have your freedom. But it's a dangerous thing. These people have weaseled their way into all sorts, not just our educational system, but to government and just in all sorts of positions of power, just to share their influence. And it's really only been really lately where it's been really okay to come out and say things like, well, not so okay, but okay enough for them to actually come out and say the words like socialist and stuff like that. And before, they really always hid by words like liberal and stuff like that. But now it's coming out more and more that they're communists, and that it's this hiding under different names. But as far as like indoctrinating all of our youth, like we have ways to prevent that, like good action movies, video games, and stuff like that, which I think can be a good tool. Because then these kids like, oh, I really like this gun in this game, and then they go find out all about the real gun, and then they go down the rabbit hole of the real firearm world, and they'll eventually come to if they go down that rabbit hole and pay any mind or attention, they're going to come across real facts and real truth, and they're not going to end up on the anti-gun side. The only people who end up on that anti-gun side are people who literally turn a blind eye and won't even like look at anything, right? They're just so stubborn. They're like, oh no, like I won't even look at that. I won't even acknowledge that your facts or evidence or anything. So in that aspect, I don't think that they've completely taken over our youth, but I think that they're they're trying, and they definitely have succeeded, right? Because look at in some aspects in certain areas, because like look at Antifa and all these these which are basically all composed of like young teenage kids, out causing all this destruction and all this kind of stuff. And so they have definitely succeeded in some ways of devastating our culture and, you know, trying to influence us. That's even more reason to stay vigilant.
Yep. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if you were done or not.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another article here. This one, we have good news, people. You know, this is not the bad news hour. And this one, you should see a link in the side, Dead Horse. This is one on what's happening in Florida in regards to arming teachers. And this is from guns.com. And this was published on the 9th of May of this year. And I'll just go ahead and again, read a little bit so you can get some of the facts rather than just opinions. Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis on Wednesday approved a measure that would make it easier to arm educators and school faculty in the state. DeSantis eschewed calls from gun control groups and signed Senate Bill 7030 into law this week. The move allowed schools or contract employees as well as law enforcement officers to be armed under Florida's new Guardian program, provided they are appointed by the local district superintendent and approved by the school board. And that certainly sounds legitimate to me. And that's all we're asking for when we say, when we generically say, let's give teachers the option, if they so choose, to protect their students at a greater level rather than simply the cower, hide, and shake philosophy of safety. Now, the course itself includes 100, which the people would need to take, whether they're teachers, faculty, or contractors, is 144 hours, which is a lot. Of which, as an example, an armed guard in the state of Illinois is only required to take a 40-hour class. So you have something to compare it to. And that varies state by state, but it's just a comparison point, of which about 2/3 consist of firearms use. The rest, I would assume, is classroom and legal stuff. About half of the districts state currently utilize the more narrowly tailored program of the version of the program. As of January 2019, 688 guardians had been assigned to public schools in the participating 25 districts. So there were some, I guess it was a trial program in earlier this, I guess it would be mid-school year, but the beginning of this calendar year. Let me skip on down a little bit. Says, in addition to Florida, tripping over my tongue. More coffee is indicated. I like that phrase. In addition, Florida law allows school employees to carry firearms on campus. According to the National Conference on State Legislators, all of these states require an employee to get approval from a local school board or superintendent, and most require a concealed carry permit or additional training as a prerequisite. And this is referring to programs in other areas. So again, you have something to balance that against. But I think, when we talk about guns in schools, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're not talking about requiring, Miss Smith, who just at the picture of Instagram of a gun drops her phone to the floor and cracks the screen. She's that mentally unstable. First of all, if she is, she shouldn't be teaching. If she's that unstable that just a picture can unwind her mentally that fast. But for students, or excuse me, for teachers that are willing, able, and can prove their competency in the use of that tool, their knowledge of its legal implications, and the training for how to use it, including mindset, starting with mindset, then going to skill, and ending with tactics appropriate for that. I'm going to call it a micro environment, because unless you're in school, most of us, have been in school in the past, but aren't actively there now. And it is kind of a unique situation as compared to a factory or an office or if you run a construction company. So it has a lot of unique qualities. Yeah, there are some similarities, but there's a lot of differences too. Did you happen to see that link in the side chat?
I did, yeah. I was reading it right now. I'm all for that. I'm all for just giving the teachers their own choice, and I'm sure it doesn't take every teacher to be armed with a gun to protect the school. I don't even think it takes a quarter of them. Like, it just takes really just a couple of them to be like, oh, I feel confident and proficient enough with the firearm, you know, to provide this service, and then just keep quiet about it. And just, I think just the fact of just these shooters knowing, like, oh, I have no idea who's going to have a gun in this school, but I know that they're allowed to have guns. I think that is is going to be a big discriminate, a big factor, right? A big factor to make them say, like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go find an easier target.
And the only way I see the program possibly failing is if, because especially some of our high schools are mega schools in regards to the number of students there, that, in a small elementary school, yeah, five teachers, faculty, superintendent, etc., that are there all the time, not somebody who leaves the school regularly, may be enough, to make that critical difference if they're, within a minute or less of running down the hallway to the location. But at some of these massive high schools, that you're going to need significantly more than five because they're too spread out. There's some of the schools are expanding because of consolidated unit school districts, where a normal school was built for, let's say, 1,000 kids, and now there's 3,500 kids out there. So out back of the school, there's a series of trailers they're using as classrooms. And I'm just saying that changes the environment enough that you do need more people because it's more spread out, but you also have special considerations because of those things that they need unique training on that a concealed carry permit on. And speaking of training, I think other than a concealed carry permit, whatever is required in that state, that the only training a teacher should be required to have is what's unique to that environment, and that's it. And in lines with the school policies. I don't think they need to go through 144 hours unless that's what it takes to address the inherent issues in regards to competency and special procedures that you need to go through in regards to the use of a firearm. Are you going to, and a simple example would be, are you going to don a vest the moment you hear that special code go over the intercom, just so other students and teachers and law enforcement know that you are a authorized person in that school with a gun, so you hopefully don't get shot yourself. Also, you see an adult without that vest and you do not recognize that may well indeed be the shooter.
That's why we go get training, right? Like, we might not want to draw our gun at all until we're actually, like, engage the shooter or see the shoot, stuff like that, right? We don't want to be just running around with a gun in our hand. But that's where training, like, stuff like that can come in real handy, right?
And like fighting a war, you don't want to let the bad guys or the people you're fighting a war against know exactly what you're going to do it, because otherwise they could plan against it. So that's why the tactics involved in this need to be kept close to the chest in regards to those that teach the course and those that take the course. No sitting in the teacher's locker room chit-chatting about, oh yeah, and then we're going to do this with the kids, and then we're going to move them from point A to point B, unless that's a no-go area, then we go to point C, because you're going to have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary plan at the minimum. Any good plan for something as precious as our children. And you're not going to share that with others that may get out to the kids, because you don't know which kid or kids or a parent of a child who comes into the school irate is suddenly going to lose their nut. and because that just gives them an advantage, and you lose the advantage of surprise because they now know what you're going to do. But that's, I don't want to go off in the weeds. I'm just mentioning in regards to training.
So another thing, did you see that lawmakers demand Google scrap anti-hunting ad policy?
No, I did not.
So 2 Montana Republicans are urging Google to reconsider a policy that bans any promotion of hunting, even when it is intended as a healthy method of conservation. So these 2 Republicans, lawmakers from Montana, of course, U.S. Senator Steve Daines and U.S. Representative Greg Gianfort, both Montana Republicans, pinned a letter to Google CEO Sundar Pichai demanding the multinational tech company reverse its ban on hunting advertising. The letter came after Google told the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, a Montana-based conservation group that supports elk hunting and the American hunting heritage, that it could not buy advertising as it violated the company's policy. So that's a good thing. I think everyone knows that is educated that hunters are the biggest conservationists. Whether it's hunting in Africa or hunting here in the United States, I don't think anyone does more for wildlife conservation and environmental conservation than hunters. So I don't know anyone who packs out more trash out of the environment than a hunter when they go hunting and stuff. It sure ain't a hippie. So it, I don't see the tree huggers doing that. I really don't. I see hunters and stuff doing that. So yeah.
And that's something that is normally taught. I'm going to use an organization that's at least well known, just as an example, Boy Scouts. Is when you get up into that, that's where what I'll call outdoor skills, and camping being one of them, begin to be taught. And preventing deforestation. I mean, you don't cut down a green tree. You look for wood, that's either already fallen, ideally, because dry wood burns easily, as well as you're reducing the chance of an uncontrolled forest fire by burning off that dead wood in a controlled fashion. And a campfire, where the more of it that sits out there in nature, and we'll never, be able to put a huge dent in it, but we'll get a little bit of it if we can process that wood into normal firewood and burn it that way.
So I got some facts here too. So
okay.
The latest national survey of fishing, hunting, and wildlife associated recreation, compiled by the federal government every 5 years since 1955, counted a population of at least 11.4 million hunters in the country. These sportsmen in turn pumped $25.6 billion into the economy in 2016. Federal Pittman-Robertson funds collected from gun and ammo sales translated into over $600 million made available to state wildlife agencies in 2019 alone. So just in 2019, they got $600 million, state wildlife agencies did, basically just on taxes collected from gun and ammo sales.
Through 11 million gun hunters, correct?
11.4 million hunters out of $25.6 billion into the economy. State wildlife agencies got $600 million last year.
I do have a question, because I can't remember the answer. Do you remember roughly what the NRA proclaims is the size of their membership?
30 million? 30, 40 million, I think.
Oh, you think it's that high?
I thought it wasn't it like 30? Let me see. NRA membership. Let's Google this. So NRA membership numbers. Let's see here.
Totals.
Nobody knows how many members.
Because I thought
nobody really knows exactly how many dues paying members the NRA has, because it's not published. Annual membership figures beyond. Let's see here. Oh, the NRA says it has 5 million. Okay, so they claim 5 million.
And the reason I ask that question is because sometimes we need a point of comparison so we know either how big or small something actually is. And because just using this parlays into your article that you just read. But if we know that there's 5 million NRA members, and a large portion of those members, and I don't know whether it's 40%, 60%, or something higher or lower, are let's stick to our hunting guns, and we don't need any of that, the rest of that stuff.
Oh, we had those figures because they did a poll on all the board members. So we actually talked about that on the Daily Gun Show one night. But I believe that number of the sportsmen who of the board of not the members, but of at least just the board members that engaged in hunting, it was like 60%.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like 62% or something of like the board members were hunters. So, and I bet you that would probably be pretty similar to the NRA membership. I bet you it'd probably be similar to 60% or more are probably hunters.
Because these numbers, and what I'm trying to dig after it, and I can't get really a good hold of it, is when we do hear these numbers, how many of those members, from our point of view, my point of view, are for all practical purposes inactive activists? They pay the check, whether it's NRA or something else, but that's the extent. The couch and a checkbook is the extent of their participation in guarding our rights. They don't send emails, whether it's even if you just say, just click here. That's too much to ask for some of these people. And that being another one of many reasons that we're losing the fight. Again, I say many reasons because I cite as an example the education system. If you can get the youth to buy into the current belief system that's out there, at least by the majority, it's only a matter of, as they get older and the generation that comes after them that's going to get educated by that same mindset, that we will lose this battle. Now, unfortunately, when I say lose, it will be a bloody end. And that's something that I don't mind discussing. That's maybe a different topic for another time, but it's something that I don't mind discussing because a lot of people are afraid to discuss it for various reasons. As far as, because I don't think that the anti-gunners truly understand, other than they think it won't touch them in any way, shape, or form. As far as how far south this thing can go.
No, you're right. So let's see here. Got one more to a news thing I'd like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Brazil.
Oh man, you stole my article.
All right, well, go for it, Dano.
No, you go ahead. I'm just giving you crap, but you did steal my article.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome, I think, being so close to Venezuela and all, and just, I think this is a good thing. So, Brazilian president embraces personal gun rights. Taurus shares surge. So, never enough ammo. Just woke up to some extra money today. His Taurus shares increased in value.
He's a shill for a foreign power.
I'm pretty sure he might have became a millionaire overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, we know he has some shares in Taurus, so.
Yeah, all that big Taurus money.
Yep. So, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. I'm American, so I say it how it looks. Sliced through the country's controversial gun control laws this week, which produced a surge in shares for Brazil's largest gun maker, that being Taurus. Brazil has some of the most restrictive gun laws in the world, while the country of over 200 million inhabitants at the same time also has one of the highest murder rates. Two concepts that Bolsonaro linked in his campaign for office last year. This week, he kept his campaign promises and relaxed some gun controls on personal gun ownership and use adopted by past administrations. We are following a path totally opposed to authoritarianism, which always seeks to disarm the population, said Bolsonaro.
Can we
on
pause
his social media account? What?
Can we pause the article just at that moment?
Yeah.
Because I think that's a really important thing, that some of these people who aren't saying the word socialism, but that's what they actually mean, that in every case we look, both current and going backwards in time, every totalitarian government, whether it's been Muammar Gaddafi or whether it's been Stalin or whether it's been Mao or whether it's been Castro or whether it's been I forget the popular guy that died in Venezuela. It's not Maduro, the current guy. It's the guy before him. But that died. What and I could keep on going. Chile with a totalitarian military government. What do they all do? What's the one thing they all have in common? They all confiscate the guns and make them illegal, as well as severe penalties. I'm talking about
And what happened in all those countries after they did that? Drug cartels, and like you look at the shithole they turned into, right?
It was the first. It was the only freedom, because in their country it wasn't a right; it was a privilege. But once that privilege went, all the other privileges went right behind it: freedom of speech, the use of your property. I mean, the use of your time, your assets. You can have your business taken over, and now it's state owned. I mean,
freedom of buying a meal at an affordable price that you can actually afford to eat.
You actually owning your own bank account. They would freeze accounts over a certain amount, and then funnel out how much you could withdraw per day out of the little bit that they actually might allow you to access. Maybe you can only take out $200 a day. Well, if you're have assets of, let's just call it $1 million, which sounds huge today, but a millionaire today is not the same thing as a millionaire 40 years ago. They were very two different things. And they were also much more rare. We have millionaires all over the place. Every town has millionaires nowadays. That wasn't the case years ago. But I'm getting off topic. I have to rein myself in sometimes. So
anyway, he posted this on his social media account to 12 million followers. We are mainly attending the good citizen who follows the laws and respects society. Yeah, that's what we should be doing, not catering to the criminals. As detailed by the Rio Times, the new decree will open Brazil to more gun imports, as well as enable more individuals to legally own, use, and carry firearms. Additionally, the move will boost the yearly ammo purchase limit on restricted categories on firearms from 50 cartridges to 1,000, and on unrestricted types to 5,000 rounds. So before they were only limited to 50 rounds. But now it's going to be 1,000 on restricted types. So I'm guessing restricted types might be like hollow points or armor piercing or something, and then unrestricted types up to 5,000. That's probably regular FMJ and stuff. That's just what
like in Mexico, certain calibers.
Yeah, I'm probably do like 50 BMG, stuff like that.
Yeah, non-military cartridges is what they're allowed to have.
Yep. Like 380 so popular and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That's why still 380 so popular for the whole world, is because there's a lot of European countries where they can't have NATO calibers, so 380 is like the 9mm over there because they can't have 9mm.
Right, as well as 38 Super.
Yep.
Another very popular, especially in Mexico. It's hugely popular.
Oh yeah.
9mm is
every 1911 barbecue gun in Mexico is a 38 Super. Let's see here. So let's see, where was I? So many of the current controls were implemented during the administration of leftist president and union boss Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who held power in the country from 2003 to 2010. De Silva was convicted last year of public corruption charges and is currently in prison. Although the country is home to one of the largest handgun makers in the world, Taurus, private ownership of legal pistols and revolvers is rare due to tight regulations. With the adoption of Bolsonaro's decree, the Brazilian gun maker saw their stock jump 21%, according to Reuters. Torres said the order could significantly increase the demand for firearms by hunters, shooters, and collectors, and law-abiding citizens for self-defense and defense of their property. So I think that's a good thing, being so close to Venezuela. Heck
Oh,
yeah, hopefully Venezuelan people see that, and they take that same step to the path to the right direction. While we're here in America taking steps backwards, there's a shithole countries out there taking steps in the right direction. Just be aware of that.
Yeah, and there's a country that's kind of sandwiched in between Colombia, which is, as Dead Horse mentioned, the drug cartels. And it's not that, some handgun's going to protect you against somebody with full auto. No, that's not the point. The mention is it might allow you to get the hell out of Dodge, or at least out of that neighborhood to maybe live another day. It might. And might is better than no chance at all.
Yeah, I've said for a long time, if just carrying a gun gives me or my family just 1% better chance of surviving any kind of weird situation you might ever run into, then it's worth it, I think. I'll take that. I'll take those odds. Even just 1% more of a chance of survival, it's worth it. Like, is your family not worth that 1%? Is what I would say to like an anti-gun.
I would say, playing devil's advocate for just a moment, I would say the only danger in that idea is that almost falls in line with, well, if it just saves one life.
Well, that's exactly what I'm referring to. Is that argument? Like if it saves just one life, like isn't that 1%? Like, isn't that worth it? Like, to you, like, it's that same argument.
Well,
right?
I mean, if we were to rewind this conversation, and if I would have said much earlier, and I say, well, Dead Horse, you already said that my argument that if it saves one life doesn't make it worth it is not valid. Therefore, your 1% chance of assisting you is not valid. I mean, the way that it's used and the timing of it can make all the difference as to whether it helps your
you're right.
trying to make or not.
But I think that I think we would see that if we actually looked at like some facts and stuff. I don't know. I would come to the conclusion that if you have a gun on you, you're probably more likely to survive a violent attack, right? Like I'm sure we could find some kind of statistic or odds stating from the FBI that if you have a gun of some sort for defense, you're less likely to you or your family probably less likely to receive a injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you would just have to pull those facts out of your pocket.
Right. Do we have any comments out there from people listening?
We do. Patrick says, why not have a security team of 4 to 6 people protecting the school? Problem solved. Make it open to anyone to apply. There's been a lot of stuff like vets out there, that a lot of out of work vets, stuff like that would be good jobs for them and stuff. And I agree with that. I really don't care personally, I don't care if it's a trained military vet, if it's just some security guard, if it's an actual law enforcement officer, if it's the teacher or the janitor. But when they're in uniform, I think that they can become a target, and they can become there would be ways to like avoid them, or the ways to do something. But when it's a teacher or janitor or just any random person that's carrying, like you can't plan for that. Like, you can't be like, oh, I'm gonna wait, this guard's always at the front, so I'm gonna go in the back. Or like, you can't plan for it when you don't know who has the gun. But when they're in like uniform and it's an obvious like security guard walking around, right, with a gun, you might be able to circumvent them or take them out first or whatnot. That, I don't think it's as near as a deterrent as, I don't know who has a gun, I just know that there's guns in there, right?
Yeah, that goes directly to the pros and cons of the differences between concealed carry versus open carry.
Yeah.
And if there's somebody dedicated to security, and I think there should be, depending on the size of the facility, at least one possibly 2 or 3, depending on the size and the layout of the school, public safety officers at that school that are armed, because there is a role for that. But the other thing is that I think for schools that have, let's say, budgetary issues, and what school doesn't, because they want to maintain, the LGBTQ art class that specializes in erotica at the high school level. We got to maintain that, but we're running short on money. Well, how do we do it? Well, because hiring a person is very expensive, and somebody who's never been involved in payroll, either at your job or as an employer or as a contractor,
you pay just as much taxes on your employee as your employee pays the taxes.
But it's much less expensive to take your existing employees and say, you know what, this is something that may never happen, but we're willing to help you, and I'm sure there are places out there that would be willing to help lower the cost of that training dollar, so we don't have to hire people. I mean, those people I think should still be eligible if they want to volunteer. That great on them. But that needs to be a layer in a multi-tiered defense. But those concealed carry teachers is critical. That's where it has to start. But if you need a temporary bridge of volunteers to get there, then you get your temporary bridge. But once the teachers are in place, that doesn't mean you disregard these men and women that have volunteered. It's just that they roll into that greater plan. So again, maybe they can be the focal points at either exits or entrances, and they guard that station.
Well, and another thing I'll say, whether it's a police officer or private security or whatever, what duty to protect do they have? What kind of policies do they have? If shots are being fired, and are they waiting for backup? Are they waiting for the SWAT team? Are they hiding behind a tree outside while this is all going down? Whereas I know there's teachers out there who really care about their students, who would really step in front of a bullet to save their students, which has been documented in some of these mass shootings where teachers have used their bodies to cover their students. Imagine if that teacher would have had a gun to shoot back, right?
Basically, we have to acknowledge there will be teachers that will have students dead in their classroom, but found alive cowering underneath their desk. That will happen, because not all people have the mindset of ending another human life.
But I like the idea, but I know that somewhere in every school, for the most part, that there's going to be teachers in there with that mindset who would engage a subject, who would do whatever they had to do to protect their kids. And honest to God, I like that. I would rather have one of them have a gun at my kid's school and be protecting my kids versus a security guard who knows what, right? This guy might be making $7 an hour. He's like, screw this. It's not worth my life. They're not my kids don't go to this school. Like, we don't know, right?
Right.
But some of these teachers really have an invested interest in these kids. And to them, it's like their own kids. There really are teachers out there with that mentality. And I would prefer for one of them any day of the week to have a gun versus just some random guy. Like I said, we don't know what his department policies are. We don't know what his duty to protect is. We don't know. Like we and we don't know that with all the teachers. But I think that we're more than likely to get a teacher who's like, I'm not letting my kids get killed today versus a security guard.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, which is, again, why parents that volunteer, and have the training should be able to, because they have a vested interest, just like the teacher. But the police officer, the public safety officer, as I call it, can address subjects that are far beyond and much more common in regards to student comes and all of a sudden out of his bag falls, a half a bag of marijuana or whatever. Somebody's got to deal with that, and from a legal perspective, and that should be law enforcement. And it's a lot easier to do it with this officer that's there that at least knows the face and who are the good kids and who are the troublemakers, to better figure out what to do in regards.
They've stopped doing that now, Dana. They've stopped doing that. So nowadays, if a kid takes drugs to school and it falls out of their bag or something, and they get caught with something like that, now they have these laws where they're like, oh, we don't want to get you into the criminal system, right? So they keep it internally, and he's disciplined internally in-house in the school system, and it's not reported to the authorities. And that's going on more and more and more lately. One of these past school shooters that recently happened to, and he was basically, internally in the school system, he was punished, right? But no mention ever got to legal authorities. And I can't remember, was it a knife he brought to school or something? But it was something like he brought a weapon or something to school, but they never told the cops about it because it was all handled internally because they didn't want to get him mixed in with the criminal system, right? It's to give kids so they don't start out early in life being criminals, right?
Yeah, and I'm not going to disagree with your premise because when I was in college, I have a very vile example of exactly what you talked about, and that was at the collegiate level. Um, uh, but not all schools have made that change. And yes, I acknowledge what you're saying. Some schools, especially in rural areas or less populated areas, have de-shifted from that, but not all. I guarantee you, in the Chicago public school system, every high school has police officers.
Oh no, you're right. No, not I'm not saying all of them have done that, but it's starting to go that way. I think it
Oh yeah.
is. It's more and more is going that way, where they're uh, some petty offense or something, some stupid mistake as a kid gets them like a legal record and sends them down a wrong road. So these schools are like, oh, we're going to do something about it. And I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. I'm not saying either way because I don't know enough about it. I just know they're doing it.
Right.
And I've heard some of the reasons why. And, and they sound good, but I think there's probably a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, and half a step back, that example that I'll put a little bit more out there. This was 1982 or 83, and as far as wow, seems like a long time ago for some people, and it was. But this was not a minor infraction nor a misdemeanor. This was a felony by a group of individuals from a place far, far away, not that distant from the Persian Gulf. And their victim, a woman. And the reason for it that I could see was the university or college, and I assume this would apply to high schools as well. They very much need to safeguard their reputation as a clean and safe place to bring your children, because otherwise next fall, especially where they have the option of where to go to school, instead of having, let's say, 5,000 new students, suddenly you have 1,500 new students, because it's gotten out that there are bad things that happening in your dormitories and on your school property because you don't have control of that system, and they will do anything to keep that from coming out. And I think high schools are just a variant of that system. They will protect their image. Go Cougars, go! I'm not referring to older women. I'm referring to the school mascot. And it's all about the football team and hopefully the academics, although that's often in question. But the basketball team, then the track. How did track and field and baseball and soccer go? And things like that. It's like all about the fluffery, not about the substance.
Yeah, we got let's see, out there on YouTube, Vanessa says that we've had police stations in our schools since the 1970s. Yeah, where's that? Is that California or New York? I'm guessing one of those two
I
states.
remember my cousins were significantly older than me and my brothers, and so they all went to school, in the 60s. And I remember them mentioning that there were officers in the high school. Now, this was suburban Chicago, and I don't mean like one step out from suburbia. I'm talking about almost all the way out of Cook County, which doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people other than, there's multiple cities between you and the city of Chicago. It's not like you're just one.
Oh yeah, a bunch of little cities, and the outsiders just are like, oh, that's all Chicago, but it's really.
Yeah. And by little, that could be from 25,000 to 65,000.
And they're just stacked like right next to each other, so you
Yep.
can like move into one to the other without even knowing, you know.
Yeah,
That's how it is, yeah.
I mean, when I was there as a child, there were actually farms separating one town from the next. That's how old as dirt I am. But nowadays, and it's been this way for many decades, unless you see the sign that you're now entering Schaumburg or Hoffman Estates or Des Plaines or whatever town suburb you happen to come from, you won't even know you're in another town because there's no separation between them, physically.
Let's see here. Out there we got Connecticut. So Vanessa's in Connecticut, and so they've had police in there and stuff. And like, so when I went to school, and I was born in Utah, but grew up mostly like during my early school years and stuff in Colorado. And there was no police officers in our schools, elementary or junior high or high school. And then I finished my high school in Utah, and there was no police officers here in high school. And it was common for them to like drive around the high school, like before, around lunch, and after school to catch kids speeding and like running the stop sign and stuff like that. Like that was a real common thing, but like not officers in the school. The only time there was officer in the school is like if he was coming to get somebody, right? Like, you know, that was the only time there was officers in the school. So, you know, and this was in the 80s and 90s, right? So like it's you know, yeah, I never experienced that. I never got to experience that kind of no metal detectors or any of that kind of stuff.
Now, would you classify the high school you went to as and I'm going to give you some city examples, whether it be Chicago, Indianapolis, which is over 1 million people, a traditional urban type high school, or was it realistically more of a urban high school, or excuse me, a rural high school, which could still be 3,000 kids, but culturally they're coming from a rural environment where there's a lot of farm kids that might have a little shit on their shoes because they had to do the chores before they came in.
No, it was definitely like Salt Lake City, Utah, like the big city, right? So it was definitely the heart of the city. They weren't busing people in from the farm country or anything. So.
Would you say that that's a unique city compared to most cities of
Oh,
similar
yeah.
size?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
So it's really not
I've been around, right?
representational.
I've been to like 30-something states and a lot of big cities, and I've been around the country, and it's definitely unique compared to other larger cities.
So would you agree that it's not representational, so it's not good in the example that you're using in regards to
I
rural?
would say it's representational of smaller areas, even though it's larger. Like you
Right.
might think like, oh, it's a capital or it's a big city. It's really, I would say it's more representational of like maybe, let's see, I think we had like 1,200 kids in the high school or something, right? 12 or 1,300, something like that. So not a ton, but it was a lot for us. And you know, so every classroom had like 30, 35 kids in it. And you know, but I would say that it would probably be more relative to like a town of 100,000 people in a high school with like 400 kids or something. I would say that it'd be like more, yeah, it'd probably be more similar to that, even though it's a city of like millions of people.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I went to a private high school, which is another subject for another time. But the public high schools around me were all in the upper teens, if not lower twos, in regards to thousands of population. And these were in the suburbs, not in the city, because that's where white flight drove young people that were, either about to get married or getting married, and then these people had kids. And so, there were a lot of schools that were of significant size that were more reflective of, or I'll call a hybrid. They were not realistic America because these were back when schools were 99.9% white.
Well, and that would be relative to what I went through, right? Because that's what my schools were. Like all my schools were like 99.9% white. There would literally be maybe like 2, 3, or 4 African American people in the whole school. Maybe like you know, maybe like 30 or 40 Hispanic people or something, right? but like there'd like literally only be like 3 or 4 African Americans in the whole school, and so
Right.
you know, so that was that's
So as I learned later, and because when you're a kid, you only know what you're exposed to. Is that then that was not representational in any way, shape, or form of the real world.
oh, not at all. And yeah, that's what you thought the real world was until you actually got out, became an adult, traveled, and then got
Right.
an education and realized like, oh wow, like I was like, yeah, I was living in a some kind of fantasy land there. Like, wow, the world's a big place. There's a lot of variety.
And I know I'm really getting off the topic here, but and then I ended up going to a state college, or a state university, which is a 180 from what I came from. So you can only imagine the culture shock. And by the way, it was an all boys school. So not only is it a co-ed school, but I lived in a building that was had males and females, and on the same floor that you could just walk 80 feet over and be in the girls' wing. We were separated by wings, not by walls with keys or doors with keys. So it was a real culture shock, both in the genders, and then it was more realistically proportional to the general population at large.
Well, we all know why they separate you guys up there in Illinois from the girls, because we know you Illinois boys can't control your urges. So you got to be separated from them girls.
It would be nice if it was that simple, because then we could identify the problem and resolve it. But unfortunately, it's not.
I never understood that. Like I never got to experience any kind of like separation. Like everything I've always been to is just like public school co-ed.
I'll say one more thing, and then I'm going to get us back on topic, and that is my first roommate after going through the type of high school that I described was a black man, because we shared rooms.
And that's where you got your education.
And that's where my education began.
Exactly.
I mean, it's still ongoing to this day, and we can make that a topic for another day, but it's not really a guns thing. But I do have something I would like to talk about, and it's a little bit of a bummer, but we need to be aware of these things, because there is a phrase, and I can't remember how it's worded, but it's about what begins in California is simply a test program for what will be rolled out throughout the rest of the United States. And what I'm referring to is a California advances a bill to allow bosses and co-workers to file gun seizure orders, i.e. red flag laws. Can you imagine your co-worker that just doesn't like you because you're you? You didn't do anything. You didn't necessarily think, but maybe you're, the good-looking one and they're not the good-looking one, and you're a woman and she's a woman, but she doesn't like you because she's catty. And she decides, well, I know her husband has something because she just mentioned it. Even though she's not for it, I bet you I can really mess up her life by calling somebody in. I'm just making up an example, but let me go to the article and just read just a couple of parts. California Assembly on Monday advanced a bill to add schooling faculty, employers, so school faculty as well, and co-workers to the list of people who can ask a judge to take away someone's guns. Measure AB 61 passed the Assembly in a Democrat-heavy 54-16 vote and now heads to the state Senate. So it hasn't passed, but it's on its way. And California has never seen a gun control law it didn't like. Would greatly expand who can file for a gun violence restraining order in the state's so-called red flag law. And then,
is California a right to work state, or is it a union state? I don't know.
do not know the answer. Maybe someone on the YouTube side can help us answer that. Is California a right to work state or not?
Because that.
But the current law allows seizure of firearms for up to 21 days from an otherwise legal gun owner who's believed to pose.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, there's Tom, we're up for the same promotion. Let's drop an anonymous tip.
Yeah. For those gun owners that are believed to pose a significant danger, the initial order could be extended for as long as a year if the situation warranted, while filing a false petition is a misdemeanor offense.
Can you imagine that being in California and having to like fear like living under that like rule of thumb and that fear of like I can't even tell my coworkers, I can't even mention I own a gun, I can't post about it on social media, I can't talk about it, you know? Man.
Me and Dano do.
Let me add one more thing here, and that's that because they also added some other people that would also be able to red flag you, and that is school employees such as guidance counselors and teachers, as well as employers and coworkers of a subject. Now, what that means of a subject, I'm not sure. Okay, good morning, Tony.
Hey Dano. Hey Dead Horse.
Hi Tony.
Sorry I'm late, but I slept in.
Oh, it's fine. You're welcome here anytime, my man.
Sleep in whenever you can, dude.
Well, I stayed up carving wood until about midnight. Then the last cut I got, I said, fuck it, that's enough. I'm going to be short on blood tomorrow if I don't quit. Oh, shit. No, me and Dano are in that position too, really.
I'll be right back.
Our Republican governor signed our fucking red flag bill into law back when he was in office, that prick. Awesome motherfucker.
Oh,
And
do you gotta? I know how I don't know how, but I hear about how anti-gun Illinois is from everyone, right? From you guys and stuff. Do you live in that same kind of fear that like Californians seem to have to about like these red flag laws and being turned in at like every little thing? Tony,
if you would look at my Facebook and social media stuff that I got that's open to public, there's never been a picture of any of my guns on it that I can remember. I will post pro Second Amendment stuff, but I never talk about what I got. But no, I really don't, because I live in a small town. It ain't. Fuck, everybody knows everybody pretty much.
don't have to like worry about walking the car with like a rifle case and one of your neighbors being like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, calling the cops. Oh, they got a gun in their car. They're just like how like someone just can't carry a gun in a case to their car and just drive away from their house. Like, what's going on here?"
Well, they know I have a permit, so if they called the cops would just tell them that yeah, he can. That's one of the nice things about small town. I mean, I would be petrified to be in Peoria, which is the nearest city to me. And I would far more be in need of a gun in Peoria than here. I mean, actually, there's
Tony, are you saying that you have the ability to be a Gene Dixon and actually predict psychically when you may or may not need to carry a gun so you can leave your gun at home sometimes?
I never leave my gun at home.
I'm just basing that off. I'm kind of saying this tongue in cheek, but because I know you. But based off of what you said, as far as more dangerous, meaning more likely, it's like, well, more likely it is until it shows up at your doorstep.
I definitely take that into consideration depending on where I go. Depending on where I go, it might determine if I carry a second gun on me. Might determine, what guns I carry on me, magazine capacity, caliber. I mean, a lot of factors.
I would feel perfectly comfortable walking around here with my Phoenix in my pocket here in town. It's that little 10-shot 22 pistol.
Uh-huh.
I go out of town and I'm carrying my Smith & Wesson and extra mag, at least one. And I probably have a couple other handguns in the car with me if I'm going to like Peoria.
Now, the one thing question I want to pose to both of you, because I find it interesting, is if the goal is always until the threat has been stopped, and that doesn't mean death. That just means that it's no longer a threat. Is why does caliber even play a role in that decision? Because either something is capable of being lethal enough as far as you're concerned and meets the requirements, or it does not.
Because here in my town, the gun would be a visual deterrent.
Are you saying please don't tell me, at least on air, you're doing what I think you may be alluding to.
No. If I have to pull the gun out, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just a gun. So that's, the odds of me running into something here that just showing the gun wouldn't curtail slim.
Well, I can't share with you my experiences on that topic because I don't have any. I can share with you what national instructors have told me is never count on the deterrence of pulling a gun. On some people, because with some people's mental makeup, that may indeed work, but never assume that that's part of your multi-tiered self-defense setup.
Every situation's different, right? Like if a guy already has a weapon out or a gun out or something and your life's like super, super in danger, like, yeah, you might not want to pull your gun out and just be like, oh, hey, not today. You just might want to pull your gun out and put him in the dirt. But, a situation like I had happened to me where it's basically a guy trying to rob me nicely by saying, give me your money, but with no weapons in his hand, no nothing, like, not like being like super aggressive or anything, just literally like, give me your money, fool. Right. Like that. Well, then the gun was a deterrent. Just literally pulling the gun was enough for him to be like, oh, I'm not messing with you. Bye. I didn't have to shoot someone that day. That was a good thing. Like, you know what I mean? I had never thought about that. I was specifically told that if I pull my gun, I am pulling it to use it. Department of Public Safety taught me that. They told me that. If I pull my gun, I'm pulling it to use it, right? So it was never in my mind at all, ever, that I would ever pull my gun just to use it as a deterrent to threaten somebody, right? To de-escalate a situation. I was not of that mindset at all until it happened. Until I pulled my gun and told the guy to get away from me, and that was the end of it, right? So
that goes directly to the point I made earlier, which was until there's no longer a lethal threat, and that doesn't necessarily mean death. That's what that goes to. The threat had ceased.
I am absolutely not the power caliber guy that I sometimes act like with the 44 Magnum thing. I personally believe that any gun is better than nothing.
Well, that's true, but I'm saying because you change guns depending on where you're going, that's the issue I was going after as far as caliber.
It's not. I change guns when I go hunting because I can't carry guns that I can't hunt with.
Okay, but that makes it makes perfect sense. But that's not the issue. I was going after concealed carry in your day-to-day life.
That's pretty much the time that I carry that 22.
I pretty much agree with Tony. I'm a proponent more of reliability and what do you shoot good, right? Like that's the two things. It's, to me, it really isn't. I don't care if it's 380, 9mm, 40, 45, 10mm, whatever your preference is. I'm cool with it. As long as you shoot that gun good and that gun's reliable for you, that's what I'm a fan of, right? Yeah, like to me, people want to talk shit about it all day long, but it really is about shot placement. You ask people who have actually been in gunfights, they'll tell you it's shot fucking placement. It's not what caliber you have. It's shot placement. It really is. You hit someone in the brain, you hit someone in the heart, you hit someone in the spine. That's what stops the fight. Like that's the fastest way to stop the fight.
I'm going to do a yeah, but here because that's why rimfire, with the exception of 22s, because they're so cheap, and that's the only reason that they're still hanging around, still exist versus centerfire. Centerfire is remarkably more reliable, regardless of the caliber?
No, it ain't.
I would say it is. I want to say it's remarkably more reliable. I would say it is more reliable, but it's not the same 22 Remington Golden bullets we were getting back in the 80s or even the 90s, Dano. Like really, man, I can't even tell you the last time I've ever had a CCI be a dud and not fire, like a quality 22 rimfire ammo. And then as far as like just cheap bulk ammo, like Remington Golden bullets or Remington Thunderbolts or Fed Auto Match, dude, like I'm lucky if I get one dud out of an entire brick of 550 or something, right? What it is that they'll be inconsistent and have like a higher deviation, and there'll be some inconsistencies mixed in there. But as far as reliability, yeah, they're it's not gonna ever be as reliable as a center fire because well, it's a rimmed case first of all, and then it's rim fire. But it's not the same stuff. They're pretty, man, they're pretty reliable, like for real. CCI mini mag, I can't even tell you how many thousands of rounds I've shot of that and never had a malfunction, never had a dud, nothing.
I don't think I've ever had a CCI dead either.
Yeah, CCI Stinger, Velocitors, mini mags. I mean, I've shot them all, and I just and I'm a rimfire guy. I own rimfire trainers for all my major platforms because that's how I can shoot like a lot and a lot more and shoot cheaply. And so I build an identical replica or buy an identical replica to whatever my main platform might be. My carry gun, so I carried an M&P on me forever, right? So I have an M&P 22, to practice with. ARs, I have an M&P 22 AR to practice with, and I shoot those so much. My kids all shoot 22s, and it's not the same rimfire ammo that it was back in the 90s. That not what I was getting in the 80s and 90s. Like back then I would get 20 duds a brick of Remington Gold bullets. Not nowadays. Not even the cheapest bulk ammo nowadays is pretty good.
We live in the world of today, not the world back then. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily have or the understanding that both you and Tony have that, yeah, brand matters when it comes to 22.
You know, my favorite 22 is
What's that?
round golden bullets.
Yeah, I mean, they're great.
But yet,
I've got thousands of them.
You mentioned just a few minutes ago about how your experience with CCI.
I don't use CCI that much.
Right.
I have probably 1,000 rounds of CCI here, but my play around is CCI shorts, CB caps.
Yeah.
My main backup gun's a 22 long rifle. A little NAA 5-shot mini revolver, right? I carry 22 CCI Stingers in it, and that gun has never malfunctioned one single time. I've shot at least probably 500 rounds out of it. I've owned that gun a dozen years, and that's my main backup carry. That is my main backup gun. Like that's, that whole 2 is one thing. So that gun's so small, I am able to carry a second gun on me without feeling like I even have a second gun.
I really think that a part of the problem with 22s and being unreliable is the way the ammo is handled. I think they get thrown around
or the guns they're shooting them in, the quality of guns.
Yeah.
I don't know. This little Phoenix is.
Oh no, the Phoenix is a great gun. There's just like some of the Chiappa 22s I've had super bad luck with, right?
For some reason, the buying public that actually actively buys guns or is getting into guns thinks that, well, since the ammo's cheap, the platform I shoot it out of must also be the cheapest that there is. And you do, to a point, you do get what you pay for in regard to reliability of the platform you're shooting it out of.
So you buy any like a Umarex, any Umarex Colt branded, the Colt Railgun Gold Cup, right out of the box, you'll have a gun that runs like a top with anything. The GSG 1911s run like a top on pretty much everything except for like Winchester hollow points. The M&P 22 full size and compacts run like absolute tops. They'll eat anything out there without ever being cleaned. I've never cleaned mine.
Do you have a pistol or rifle?
All pistols.
Just ask anybody who's owned a Ruger Mark.
Yeah, yeah. And but there is also a lot of clone guns and stuff, and one of the biggest things about rimfires is really the magazines and the feed lips on magazines, and that's one of the weakest point on any rimfire is the magazine and the magazine feed lips, especially because we're dealing with a rimmed case here, and it's very, very important. A lot of you got a weak recoil spring, and that recoil spring is responsible for feeding that next round coming back the energy. It absorbs energy from the shot, it stores it, and then that stored energy is what's responsible, right? And they're already so weak that if anything funny is going on with your magazine feed lips, and plus with it being a rimmed case, but you like 99% of all rimfire problems can be directly traced right back to the magazine, for real. The other 10% or the other 1% is probably just either an extractor issue, extractor or striker.
On this Phoenix, I started having issues with one particular magazine. It turns out that the backup mag I carried, I had mashed sitting on it in my back pocket. So it's pretty thin.
Yeah, if you drop them on the ground, the mags are always pretty thin on those. They're not fragile, I mean, they're fragile. They're not like combat mags. They're not made to take drops on the ground, and so one little drop on the feed lips, or just even prolonged, just having ammo stored in the mag, a fully loaded 10 or 12 round mag or whatever, and just having that ammo stored in there long enough, the metal can be so thin on the feed lips on certain guns that it'll spread those feed lips wide open, and then you'll get double feed problems.
Well, I ain't run into that yet. I've left mine loaded ever since I got it.
Well, it depends on the gun. Again, that depends on the gun and how thick the mag feed lips are. That's really
something that Dead Horse mentioned that either one of you can comment on, or both of you, that I find ironic is that from a rimmed cartridge where there's literally more material to grab onto, that for some reason 22s just generically seem to have as their secondary issue sometimes is pulling it out of the case when there's actually more material there to get a hold of.
There really isn't, though.
Rimmed.
The bullet's often a bit larger than the case. A hair larger than the case. If you ever look at a 22 bullet, it's stuffed on top of the case, and it's often just a hair larger than the actual case, right? Unlike center fire, where the case is larger than the actual projectile. So the way that expands in the chamber, they have to have such a sloppy chamber, and the way that it expands. And then if there's any kind of dirt at all, that leaves a lot of room for carbon to get back in there in that gap, right? And build up a lot faster because it doesn't have near as good of a gas seal of that rim or that case basically expanding. So because it doesn't have as good of a gas seal, it gets dirty way faster. And it's just kind of a horrible mess.
Well, and then there's it doesn't really have more to grab onto. The center fire stuff is just the lip is rebated. It's got the groove cut into it, so it's gripping on solid brass where 22 is gripping on folded sheet brass.
True, very true, and an important difference as far as those that may not be aware of how 22s are made. It is something you might want, and there are some really great videos out there showing at the factory level how they just make the 22 case, which I found fascinating.
I mean, if somebody out there is thinking about carrying 22, spend the money and buy mini mags or stingers, and then you can have peace of mind that if your gun's functional, they'll go off.
My wife's first gun she ever got, first gun I got her was a little SIG 22, and because I would rather have her have a gun that was more comfortable and not scary to her, and that she was comfortable shooting and she could actually shoot well and accurately, and I'll tell you what, 10 rounds at 22 in like 3 or 4 seconds, when your wife can shoot like 10 rounds of 22 and at 10 yards in like 4 seconds and shoot a tiny little 4 or 3-inch group that fast, right? And then I don't have a problem with them carrying 22 as long as the gun works. Until they get more comfortable, and then they're like, okay, now I'm ready for something bigger, right? And then you step them up.
It's ironic that you mentioned the SIG Mosquito because that's a gun that it either works fine or it's
A fucking piece of shit.
or that. It's a PG-13. Thanks, audience, for understanding us. Sometimes we do slip because we are emotionally charged on some of these issues.
Like all we've done to ours is just shoot the hell out of ours, right? She still owns it. That's still her like main trainer. That's her main gun that she shoots the most is that 22. And the gun runs like a top with thunderbolts, golden bolt, like anything. It runs like a top. I even did a trigger job on it where I cut the sear in half because the sear is an actual piece of spring metal that actually flexes right off the trip, and so that it's an actual piece of spring metal. I did a trigger job where I cut that sear in half to relieve the Sig Mosquito. Probably has one of the worst triggers in any gun I've ever felt my entire life. It's like a 14-pound double action pull, and like single action pulls like 8 pounds, 8 or 9 pounds. And I did a trigger job on it, but other than that trigger job, I haven't done a damn thing to that gun as far as making it work. Like literally, like we don't even like clean it or oil it. Like most of our 22s, we don't. Like we just shoot them. And
the one I had, it would not roll through a full mag ever. Now the gun felt great in the hand, it really did, but yeah, it has an obnoxiously horrible trigger.
And I think they came with 2 stiff of recoil springs, and I heard they only started coming with 1. But I still think that even the ones that were just coming with the 1 recoil spring were too stiff, because ours came with 2, one for standard velocity ammunition, one for hyper velocity ammunition. Well, the hyper velocity ammunition didn't work with like even hyper velocity ammunition. It was just way too stiff. And the other one that worked with hyper velocity ammo and didn't work so well with standard ammunition until I just shot a bunch of thunderbolts, because that's mainly what we were putting through it anyway, was a hyper velocity ammo. But after it actually had like thousands of rounds of thunderbolts through it, now it'll shoot standard velocity ammo just fine too. It doesn't care. I think it's really just too stiff of springs is I think probably one of the main things was wrong with that gun.
But
that gun's built by GSG.
You shouldn't have to shoot, thousands of rounds. And while you're going through that thousands of rounds, there's no indication that you're getting closer to the end of the issue.
Well, part of my problem with the gun, I didn't realize at the time, is I bought 3 bricks of a Gila Super Extra, whatever the hell it was.
Oh, that's garbage.
Yes, it is absolutely crap. I would never, ever buy a Gila again, ever.
Is that the quiet stuff?
No, but it's garbage.
But it was all I could get. That was back when 22 was like hen's teeth.
Yeah.
No, that was just really, really bad rimfire ammo. That's the bottom of the bucket right now, really. Is for the dirtiest, just nastiest. And that you'll get like 20 duds a brick and stuff like that. Like that's
I was doing better than that. I was getting 20 out of 100 probably.
Yeah, like that stuff's just really, really bad. It's so bad that I donated all mine because I bought a brick of that. Right? I donated all mine to the Boy Scouts.
You really screwed the Boy Scouts.
I had that problem with just 1 brick. The other 2 bricks I bought ran fine. But 1 brick was the first one I opened, and it was awful. And I just took it all to the range and took the grandkids out there and said, here, shoot all
I've
this
had the worst luck with the Gila, period. Like, it doesn't matter what it is from them. Whether it's their flash holes being misdrilled so you can't reload their ammo because it'll break your pin. It'll break your decapping pins, right, for popping out their primers, because the flash hole is literally, I mean, not just drilled a little off, like literally drilled over to the side of the primer. And you're like, what the hell? Like, no wonder why some of these rounds feel like super soft and weird shooting, right? Like some of them just don't feel and sound the same. And because their flash holes are like the most inconsistent I've ever seen out of any brass I've ever seen my whole life. Like, it's just, I mean, I can't even believe. It's literally like they have a blind guy there at the drill press that's kind of somehow lining up the brass and pulling the handle down to drill the hole.
When I first got my 22, I bought 500 Aguila 22 long rifle shots, and I didn't have any issues, but I've never bought any since, simply because When I go to places like Ammo Seek and stuff like that, which looks at all online, not all, but a lot of different online sources for ammunition, they weren't necessarily always number one as far as the characteristics of what I was looking at for the type. So what I've done since the Ammo 22 apocalypse is over is I've gone to 100% CCI. I don't shoot a lot of it, but when I do shoot it, I want to make sure I have the best chance of it going boom.
Hey, Daniel, I think the best, most reliable bulk ammo for the dollar is that Fed Auto Match, for real. That Fed Auto Match, I would put that up there like almost like right under CCI Mini Mag. I can't even remember the last time I had any issue with Fed Auto Match, and I shoot a ton of that. That's my preferred real plinking ammo.
I shoot very little 22, which is why I don't like, do an ammo quest sort of a thing. It's like I found something that works. It's really, really reliable. Costs a little bit more, but since I shoot it so rarely, why not stick with it? So I stocked up, on that to a point that I was satisfied with. And because I don't shoot it that much, it sits there, but it's always there.
You stick with CCI, that's fine. They work. As a kid, there was Winchester and there was Remington Thunderbolts.
Right.
I can't remember. Wildcats is what the Winchester was. And that was, goddamn, that was all I knew until the Walmart came to town and they had CCI because the plastic box was different. But my folks did not buy that shit.
But I do remember a lot of what I'll call, they were no name to me. I don't want to call them generic, but, little 50 round boxes of, a brand I never heard of.
That was all rebranded Remington and Winchester ammo, and it would be like Sears' own brand name, and like they did that a lot. But all that ammo was pretty much just rebranded.
But Tony is correct that the vast majority of what was out there were those two brands, Remington and Winchester.
And I don't recall having problems with that ammo when I was younger. What I had was a 572 Remington that would break the fucking firing pin whenever it wanted to. And that taught me a lot about not playing with the damn gun because you can break it.
Oh, yeah.
It was
I was going to say, a lot of people don't realize that there's like some big change, like differences in 22 ammo too. They think it's all the same, but the standard velocity stuff's really like subsonic, right? And the hyper velocities are, supersonic, right?
Right.
And it's just like if you take a semi-auto gun that's tuned for one or the other, you can definitely have issues going from one or the other. So a lot of the guns nowadays are made to run hyper velocity ammo. And if you put standard velocity ammo in them, they're not going to run. Their recoil springs are too stiff, stuff like that. The standard velocities mainly nowadays shot out of like bolt actions and lever actions and stuff like that. And to be subsonic and quiet and stuff like that, that's where you're going to see most of the standard velocity stuff. So if you have a semi-auto, your best bet's to making sure that whatever you buy is like a hyper velocity, a Remington Thunderbolt, a CCI Mini Mag, something like that, something that's supersonic, something at 1150 or more FPS, more like in the 1280 FPS range.
And if you're the proud possessor of a Marlin Model 60, you best get familiar with cleaning that witch, because dirty ammo will make the gun stop working pretty fast.
And then be super careful on what you're using to clean it out. Because I actually wore out Marlin Model 60. It was my main shooter when I was young. And I had that gun for this years and years. I can't even tell you how many tens of thousands of rounds I put through that gun. I wore it out by cleaning it. I literally wore the end of the bore and just wore it out by cleaning it.
But if you shot 10,000 rounds through it, that gun is not designed to be a high round count gun.
Bullshit. Oh no, it should last forever as far as like the rifling, as far as round count. Like that gun should be able to go 100,000 rounds as far as the rifling and the barrel goes. But I literally wore it out by cleaning it, by using the wrong brushes, by being not properly trained and educated on how to clean a gun. and just shitty techniques and shitty cleaning rods and just being like a bad gun owner, right? I literally ruined this gun.
Don't stick nothing in your gun that is stronger than the material the gun's made out of.
Or even close.
Yeah, no shit.
It doesn't. Yeah, even if it's an aluminum, will still mar steel. Like
It 22 lead is so damn soft that cleaning that barrel to a new, polished finish is unnecessary. The gun will like to be a little dirty anyway. Usually,
yeah, they shoot better dirty. They really do.
I find that simply a bore snake with a little bit of what I'll call CLP, after the bristles, is all it needs, as far as the barrel is concerned.
Honestly, my thing nowadays, because my 22s aren't defense weapons, they're training weapons, right? And I treat them rough. I abuse them. I just shoot the hell out of them. I don't like to clean guns. I really don't. I don't enjoy cleaning guns. I have too many of them and I shoot too much. It's just a pain in the ass. So I prefer not to clean my 22s. And I find that they really do shoot more accurately. A dirty 22, the chamber tightens up. You get more of like a Bent's match chamber. Once that chamber gets dirty, your gun starts to tighten up in groups once they're dirty. And if a 22 won't run for me after a couple boxes of bulk, after 1,000 rounds, if that gun's still not running just fine, it's not worth. It's a 22. It's not worth having for me, honestly. For me, right? Because I don't want to be cleaning that gun after every range session.
Well, the Marlin Model 60 is really susceptible to dirt in the action.
Oh yeah.
You run dirty ass ammo through it, you're gonna have to clean it probably a couple hundred rounds.
Do you think that's more so than the 795? That's the semi-auto.
Action.
What you guys like? How I literally clean my 22s is when I go out, I'll pull like the bolt out of my M&P 1522. I'll pull it out, hold it in one hand. I spray it with ram oil, shake it on the ground a couple times, stick it back in the gun. Like that's like that, and I basically do the same thing with the slide. That's how I clean my 22s. And if it won't keep running with that, then I don't pretty much shoot them. And I found that most 22s nowadays, or at least the ones I have, like they do that. Even the Phoenix that you have, Tony, will run like that. Ours, we never clean ours.
My Marlin is from 1972.
Yeah, mine is from like 2005.
And it is still the same track driver it was when it come out of the factory. The gun is phenomenal. Don't run a Gila in it. It won't like that.
Oh, plus I should point out my Marlin 60 that I wore out was the SS version, the stainless with like the orange sights, right? That they had back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the one I wore out. So stainless is a little bit softer, but I wore the rifling out of that barrel, and that gun started shooting really, really crappy. And straight up, my gunsmith told me that it was me being a dumbass with like cleaning procedure. And then he showed me how to properly clean a gun.
Well, that's something.
That's when I got an education.
People need to understand about the Marlin is the micro group rifling.
Yep.
It's not all that deep cut.
Well, that's why they're so accurate, because it doesn't deform that projectile near as much as a traditional rifle bore does, right?
And you cannot be really aggressive on them because the grooves are so damn small, you'll fuck them up pretty quick, as Dead Horse explained.
Yep. And really, and granted, I owned that gun for like a dozen years before I finally ruined it, right? And like I shot, lots, but that gun realistically should have lasted me the rest of my life if I would have just cleaned it properly when I did cleaned it, not cleaned it as often after I didn't, I found out, the lead actually kind of creates a coating on the inside of your bore, lead coating that actually preserves your bore and, presents any kind of oxidization on the inside of your bore. Like plus it was a stainless gun to begin with. I didn't have to worry about cleaning it after just, I would stop in the car, shoot 50 rounds, go home, clean my gun. You know, like I just every single time I would shoot that gun, I would be cleaning it, and I literally ruined a gun by cleaning it too much. So
You know, that coating you're referring to is also what fills up the grooves.
It doesn't. The thing is it's so damned soft that it doesn't ever actually fill them up. You know, it's nothing that prevents the bullet from going through. Like on a center fire, when you start getting copper,
what it does is it fills up any kind of little divot or microscopic, basically puddle or pool or you would know them as like a pothole or something, right? These little microscopic little specks, not only in the rifle but in the bore itself, right? So that'll get filled with this real thin coating of lead in a 22, and it gets filled with copper. And in center fire rifles and stuff, the same thing will happen with copper. It'll basically get copper plated. But
What you're referring to is the breaking into the barrel, and
yeah.
usually, and there's variances, that happens within about 100 rounds.
Well, that's why we slug a barrel, and
and at a micro level where there'll be spurs and stuff like that, it will slowly either break them off or bend them, in a direction where they won't cause, as much of an impact on the projectile. But because it's a softer metal, it takes a number of rounds to make that happen.
I don't think that there's the burr issue on the Marlins microgroove that there is on Ballard cut or something like that.
I was only referring to in general breaking in a barrel.
Well, that's one of the good things about that microgroove too, is it's right out of the box. It's just good to go, and it's going to be accurate and repeatable. Yeah. That's why those guns were so popular, even though they were tube fed, and everyone wished that they were magazine fed like the 10-22, but they still bought the 60 because the 60 outshot the 10-22 any day of the week.
Well, the 795 then, this magazine.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got my son, was the 795.
Yeah, and the 795.
That's why I moved him up from the cricket too.
It is the 795 that I have, and it's the only 22 that I have, is by far the most accurate at short ranges than any other gun I have.
It's way accurate.
Marlin's barrels are fucking fantastic, really. Oops, sorry, effing fantastic.
Oh, that's okay. This is a PG-13 stroke, Tony.
Yeah, but I'm supposed to say the F word once.
Oh, okay.
And he didn't sound emotional.
My hunting gun is a 981, which is tube fed bolt action. I was adamant on that because I like tube fed. And it is the most accurate gun I have ever owned in my life, as far as I can remember. I can put them all in one hole at 100 yards. It's a big hole, and I got to shoot a lot of bullets to get that hole that big, but it doesn't throw shit. Now, tomorrow I may not be able to do that, but the last time I checked it, it would. It's hard to believe there's no pliers to come out of the gun.
Even that little Phoenix 22 you got, though, right? With a fixed barrel, straight blowback. Those are pretty accurate for what they are, for being just a tiny little, like, 3-inch barreled pistol. Those are surprisingly accurate, aren't they?
I've killed squirrel with mine.
What's that, Tony?
I've killed squirrel with mine.
Yeah, they are surprisingly accurate. They are. I mean,
I had the 5-inch target barrel on it, just in the spirit of total disclosure, but it did it.
Dude, man.
The squirrel was probably 15 feet away too, but
Tell you what, like, beware of someone who can shoot a 22 long rifle accurately. That's all I can say. 22 long rifle is the hardest caliber to shoot. A guy who knows how to shoot one, beware of him, because he can shoot anything. For real. So all those, like, squirrel hunters out there that are going out there every weekend hunting squirrels with their 22 and varmint hunting, like, watch out for those. Those guys are shooters. I'm telling you, those are the same guys that, like, I see win matches. So
Something else you'll see is that they're not out there varmint hunting at 500 yards neither. They're out there with their 22.
Yeah, yeah.
Hear these guys talking about
Talking about what?
hogs. You look on YouTube and there's guys that are hunting hogs, like down in
Oh yeah, the
Texas.
22,
Yeah,
right behind the ear. Yeah.
there's guys out down there that are going out and just making up a blind and shooting them son bitches on the ground with 22.
Well, that's one thing I never understood is, first of all, why would I want to waste like a $1 bullet or a 50-cent bullet or something on a field mouse or a gopher or rock chuck or, squirrel? Like, why would I want to do that, right? Like, wasting a 3-cent bullet sounds a lot better to me. And, and I don't think the gopher realizes, oh, I was just shot with the 22 or a 30-06 or, I don't think he realizes, like, a 22 does pretty devastating job on those small animals. So,
Over on the YouTube side, there was a comment kind of going to something one of you guys mentioned. This is from Scott. I only clean my 1022 when it starts messing up. And I think Dead Horse was the one who said something in regards to, you don't mess with cleaning your guns at all until they start malfunctioning.
No, not me. Like I want it to be able, like, I pretty much don't mess with them. I'll spray like some lube in there, some like Rem oil, and shake off the bolt. But all like the 22s I have now that are trainers, I don't ever clean them at all. Like they don't malfunction anymore. Like they don't malfunction. I have so many thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds through these guns with no cleaning other than just, like I said, spraying the bolt, shaking it off, spraying the slide, shaking it off. And that's it. That they don't need to be cleaned. They're just, that's not a thing anymore with these guns. There's going to be guns that are the Buckmark or something that's made to tighter tolerances, that's more refined. They're going to be a little bit more finicky, but even those guns are going to go thousands of rounds before they start to mess up, right? And I don't know, some of these guns like the M&P 1522, I'm telling you, that gun does not need to be cleaned. The M&P 22 pistol doesn't need to be cleaned. The GSG 1911s, they don't need to be cleaned. You can put brick after brick after brick through these guns and never use any lube, never do anything, and the guns are just going to keep running, because that's what I've been doing to mine. And it's just the way they're designed nowadays. They're such loose tolerances and designed to work with just the crappiest 22 ammo, because they don't want mad customers, I think. So these guns are built like AKs to just run everything.
Ironically, you mentioned two very different guns. One that you mentioned, or a couple you mentioned, were very loose as far as why they were reliable, like AKs. And the other one you said was very tight-fitting tolerance, which was the Buckmark. So either, the tight tolerances help, in one regards, i.e. accuracy, but they also hurt usually in sometimes reliability or getting finicky as far as how they're maintained.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt in my mind a Buckmark's more accurate than my M&P 22 pistol, right? There's this right out of the box, like any day of the week, a Buckmark or a Ruger Mark II or Mark III is going to be more accurate than that M&P 22, like any day of the week.
Buckmarks are not real susceptible to dirt either. The one I had wasn't.
No, like I said, and even those are going to go thousands of rounds before they encounter a problem. Like, yeah, man, it's hard to mess up nowadays. It really is. That's why when I buy a 22 that doesn't work, I'm like really disappointed. I'm like, man, everyone else is making a 22 rimfire that just works great. It's not the old semi-autos we were used to back in the day. And I don't know if it's CNC and tolerances and just everything's just gotten so much better and they have everything just figured out. But it seemed to me like almost everyone's just making a really decent 22 right now that just works. But you are going to trade off. There is a trade-off between accuracy and fitment and stuff and reliability. There definitely is, especially with the 22 rimfire that run as dirty as they do, because they run dirty. I mean, that's all there is.
Watched a video on a Mossberg 22 and Savage 22. Both of them were like $100, and they were both really good if you can believe the video, because people can fudge that stuff. But God, even the cheapest entry level, hell, these Keystones, these things are freaking awesome.
The Cricket.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've got the Cricket, the Henry Mini. I've been into 22s for a long time because no matter what, I've always been able to either find a place to shoot them and just and cheap to shoot and just they're fun, and great, especially if you're supplying ammo for all your kids and stuff. Man, like I don't even know how you would supply 3 or 4 kids with all center fire ammo.
You can shoot and shoot and shoot for hours on end without getting fatigued from the racket. You subject yourself to the loud noises like center fire make when you shoot them. That wears or tires you out. You get fatigued from that. And 22, God, I can shoot it right here in my garage with shorts. Not saying that I have.
Intentionally.
And it's possible to get ammo like the CCI Quiet, and it's possible to tune a pistol like a GSG 1911 to run that. Not so much like the Aguila Super Sniper Subsonics. Those 60 grain Aguilas, like pretty much, it's like you pretty much can't get any semi-auto to reliably cycle those. They just don't have that.
But I have a disclaimer, like on the quiet rounds about, and you may have issues your pistol. It's something to the effect, because I bought a box of 50, and I forget it was in the back of the box or where it was. It said something to the effect of you may have issues in semi-autos not completely cycling. And mine did not, but at least I knew that when I bought the box of 50. At least I didn't buy a box of 500 and find that out.
I'll be back in a second. I need coffee.
Yep, understood.
When I tuned my GSG 1911 22 to run the CCI Quiets, and I just had to cut a couple coils off my recoil spring. I had to adjust feed lips on one of the magazines. So I only did it to one of the magazines, and then I made sure to mark it like, oh, this is my Quiet magazine, right? And so to shoot those, all I need is a recoil, change my recoil spring, change my magazine, and now I can shoot CCI Quiets through that gun really, really quietly. It's still a bang, it's not like a suppressor or anything like that, but it's not as quiet as when you shoot them out of the rifles, or it has that big long barrel to absorb a lot of that noise and vibration, but it's still super quiet, and they're fun. I mean, they're a lot of fun.
And so that's what I shot the CCI Quiets out of mine, and it was noticeably less noisy, but it was still not hearing protection safe.
Oh, what? What? Oh, wait. A semi-auto rifle, not a bolt action, right?
Correct.
Oh, okay. So out of a bolt action, I have found that like even out of a little Cricket, like a little 16-inch barreled Cricket, out of a bolt action, those CCI Quiets are so quiet that you'll think you had a dud round. Like you'll think that it you had a squib, and you'll be like pulling the bolt out of the rifle and looking down the barrel because you're not sure, if you didn't see where the projectile hit, like in the dirt, you think that you might have had a squib because it was so soft and quiet. It's unbelievably quiet out of a bolt action. I mean, just so quiet. I don't even see why you would even want a suppressor at that point.
I don't use the Quiet, but I do use shorts or CBs from CCI, and they too are. They're not any louder than one of the Crossman pellet guns.
Something that's kind of indirectly coming up in my mind is, and maybe somebody makes it, is what I'll call a hybrid gun, where it's a semi-auto, but by pushing a switch or whatever, you could alter it into a single fire intentionally gun, so that when you did fire this quiet or lower powered ammunition, it wouldn't jam up the gun or anything else. You would simply cycle it manually for that next round. because you were in I'm going to call it bolt action mode, where you simply grab the little charging knob or whatever, you pulled it back, which ejected the shell, and then you let it run forward on its own power, and that kicked in the next one.
You can do that. Just buy a Gila, and you'll do it like a lottery. You never know which one you'll have to cycle it by hand on.
Well, right, but I want to predictably know, and because I don't want it to jam, and then all of a sudden I got to drop the mag, and I got to try to dig it out. And, I don't want to get into that situation to where I can. Okay, I want it to run one at a time, but no various malfunctionings happening. But I don't think anybody makes a gun like that intentionally.
I tried to do that with my Marlin Model 60 with just putting shorts in it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to fling the bolts open. Well, they will, and it'll jam the gun every freaking time.
There's a gun.
It'll pull the spent round out of the chamber, but not far enough back to hit the thing that makes it flip out of the extractor.
The ejector?
And it jams the gun every time.
Right, and the only solution, which is not a solution, is to simply put one round in your magazine. Done.
So there's a gun from Turkey, Dano, that's a straight pull bolt action, okay? But you can set it to semi-auto mode. So it's straight pullback. You don't actually like uncock a bolt or anything, but there is a handle on the side, and you literally pull just straight back, straight forward, right? That's all it is, straight back, straight forward. And you can set it to semi-auto mode, where it'll start running like a regular blowback and run semi-auto for hyper velocity ammunition. But then if you're going to run something like the shorts or the quiets or something, now you set it to pullback mode. Or if you're shooting competition with it, you can shoot it to the basically the bolt action mode. And I was looking at those. I think ATI is importing them, and those looked pretty interesting to me. I've always kind of wanted a straight pullback, kind of like the old Swiss,
right?
The old Swiss surplus guns. So I've kind of always wanted a gun like that. So I thought that was.
I always thought, for the purposes when the line infantrymen still had a bolt action rifle, that the straight pullback was a lot more, at least externally, a lot more simplistic.
Oh yeah, and faster and quicker, right?
Yeah, for the infantry soldier, changing around to just because you're practically pissing in your pants sort of level anxiety, and just to do that, get your sights somewhere in the ballpark before you pull a trigger, if you pull the trigger.
I think Browning is doing something in straight pullback bolt. God, I can't remember. I don't think it was the A bolt, but it might have been. I actually don't care for the straight bolt. Straight pullback bolt. I'd rather rack the damn bolt like you're supposed to. Been doing it for 40 years. Hell, more than that.
Well, on some guns though, like let's say for where I see like some of those straight pullbacks being used for rimfire match shooting, is they have their optics so low to their bore, and stuff like that like it wouldn't even be able to work with they're literally like their rear end of their bell and stuff's like sitting like pretty much like right behind the receiver and stuff, and like a typical bolt action wouldn't even work for that, to get that low of a bore access and stuff like that. So I see things like that coming in handy, but really only for like match shooting and stuff is where I even see that straight pull bolt action even being used right now in anything. Like not really on any kind of gun, is those rimfire match shooting guns.
I don't remember where the heck I saw that Browning, but it was either in the NRA magazine that I get or Field and Stream, I think. And of course, in there, it's just an advertisement, so they're touting how great the thing is. But it doesn't appeal to me.
Now that one from Turkey does, because that one was only like $400, and like I said, and it has like a semi-auto mode, so that kind of appeals to me.
I have absolutely nothing in the world against Browning. I mean, I don't want people to mistake that, because my most expensive 22 is Browning by far.
What, a BL-22?
Yep.
What grade? A grade 1?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Good gun.
The inlaid scroll thingy, engraved scroll
25 TPI checkering. Yeah. You got the. Yeah. Yep.
Where is Browning currently made?
thingy.
Japan.
Okay.
In the Seiko factory, right?
Yeah,
I think they're made in Japan in the Seiko factory or something, right?
Yeah, they're made by Seiko, or Browning owns Seiko, or Seiko owns Browning, or something like that. They've been made there for a long time. Winchesters are made there too.
Oh no, Winchester's made by FN now.
Really?
Yeah. So FN bought Winchester, and FN makes the Winchester like 70 rifles and stuff now. And that's why Winchester rifles are becoming good again, because they actually have good barrels and can actually shoot good, because FN makes a hell of a good barrel. No matter what anyone says, FN makes some of the most accurate, best barrels, like for real. Like they have their stuff down, man. At least when it comes to their rifles. And,
I've owned a Winchester 94-22 and a Winchester 190, and both of those were really accurate.
For rimfires, I don't know, like, because Winchester doesn't make the 94-22 anymore, right? That's why they're all like $1,500.
Right.
And it used to cost $400. But if I don't know, I don't know if anyone's doing that, but I know FN bought Winchester and is apparently making all their barrels, like basically doing it. Like maybe someone else is doing their receivers, maybe Seiko or Browning, maybe they're doing the receivers for them. But I know that, at least I read that FN is doing the barrels, and they bought Winchester apparently.
That 94-22 is one of the most naturally pointing guns I've ever had. I should be shot for selling the damn thing, but bills got to be paid.
Yep. And that does really suck when let's say you might have a nest egg aside for emergencies and stuff, but sometimes life gives you an emergency that far exceeds your rainy day fund, and you got to make decisions that you never would have thought. I am never going to sell this. I don't care what it is, but then life hits you.
Yeah, I had.
Then you have kids.
Heart attack.
Yeah, whether it's loss of income combined with health, expenses of having children, and children at some points are relatively inexpensive. They're never free, but in other parts they're very expensive.
Well, it's just that I lost all my income for like 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And even after I got back to work, I was only working a couple hours at a time, building back into it. And we just didn't have the money to go that long. So the guns win.
Right.
To be honest with you, at the time, I was thinking that I wasn't going to be able to do that shit anymore.
Right.
I didn't realize that I would rebound so well.
Yeah, and having a place to live is a wonderful thing. So it's like, yeah, you wouldn't sell it, but does that include living on the street, but you still got access to that? So.
Well, fortunately, the people I bought the house from were my employers, so they just said, when you get back to work, pick up the payments again. Don't worry about it.
Well, that's certainly the type of benefit that, under normal circumstances with normal, mortgage companies you would never get.
That was part of the deal why I worked there, because I could have made a lot more money elsewhere, but it wouldn't have worked out in the end, if you counted all the benefits.
Yeah.
It's like being in a family business. I mean, I've known these people since I was in high school.
Do any other gun stuff? Tony, are you aware of any gun stuff currently happening in Illinois?
I am not aware of any movement on any of the stuff I've heard.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because there's stuff that we've talked about in the past that I'm assuming is still in the similar place. But, these things can go from, oh, yeah, it was sitting on the shelf to, and now it's out of the House and it's over to the Senate, or it's out of the Senate and now it's up to the governor. I mean, in just a couple of days.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at like the gun shop laws in our state and how quickly, the week he was in office, he signed it. Pritzker. Yep. No public discussion, no nothing.
It's going to get bad here.
Thing. Did not simply veto that bill before he left.
Because he's a freaking leftist too.
I mean, rather than leaving it unsigned. I mean, because there are, just like, in any businesses, there are businesses out there that are just barely making it. Well, a lot of those businesses that were on the tipping point, that'll knock them over. Whether it's, the required ongoing continuing education that's required, let alone the initial continuing education, or the new requirements for cameras and microphones every 5 feet, and you're required to keep that data locally that they can access at any time just by walking in the store and saying, "Show me yesterday's audio, video from all cameras for the last week." Well, that's time you cannot spend with your customers. If you're a small shop, you are not only the owner, you're the salesman, you're the stock person, you're the guy that unloads the truck.
My local he told me he could do that. He said he already had the camera system and shit in place, security. And the cost isn't going to be an issue to him because he's pretty high volume dealer. But the other ones that I like, I don't know.
Yeah, but that cost, I don't know if he has any employees or not, but that cost has to be passed on to somebody other, because he's not going to let it affect his bottom line. He's not going to say, well, that's okay, I'll take the hit. No, it's going to get passed on to the consumer. It has to be.
Absolutely. This gun shop has been in business since in the 50s. The guy that's owning it now, his grandfather opened it. His dad ran it, and when I first went in there, his dad was running it, and then he took over, and now he's fixing to retire, and his son's behind the counter, and then they've got daughter-in-laws and son-in-laws and whatnot to staff the place. I don't think they hire out of their family.
Right, but those family members that at least on paper are employees will be required to take that continuing education that they have to pay for. And by they, I mean the store to start, but it rolls like shit down, like poop downhill. And the customer has to pay for that.
All right, it's time to change the rating of this show to R. Only partial nudity, though.
Okay. Anything happening out in your area, Dead Horse? Legal wise, or legal things that maybe nearby states that we hadn't heard about?
Nothing going on here until later this fall, when we're going to try and get a constitutional carry again.
Is your state legislator only in session for couple months in the fall and a couple months in the spring.
Pretty much.
Yeah, ours is open. It's on again, off again, but pretty much year round, except they get constant vacations.
Yeah, and this will be, if it goes through this time, this will be the third time that it has passed like the House and the Senate and everything, right? But the governor won't sign it.
I can't remember which state it is, but there's a state where their legislator only meets once. It's either once a year or once every other year.
Probably Wyoming.
To prevent, what I'll call blips on the radar screen of public opinion from suddenly creating unnecessary laws.
Well, that could be any of the plains or Midwest, Western states on this side of California.
Yeah, that sounds like Idaho, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Sounds like an Idaho or Wyoming thing to me.
Yet the governor, if needed, let's say due to budgetary things or something like that, can bring it back in session at any time.
Maybe even like a North Dakota thing. Yeah, maybe even a Dakota thing.
We're only supposed to have a spring and fall session here too.
Right. But I really like the idea of minimal sessions so that they have to spend their time on the truly important things like the budget.
Right now, we're lucky because their focus at the moment is not guns; it's taxes.
How about actually putting in some laws, right, and rules and regulations about how they actually have to show up to these meetings and show up to these sessions. Let's say 80% of the time, right? Because even if we did 80% of the time, something like 90% of all fucking politicians would fail that, right, and be kicked out. So, because like they never, have you ever seen like watch CNN and watch like when they're showing like it doesn't even matter what state or whether it's federal government, and they actually scan, look at how many people are not absent, are absent, not doing their job that we hired them to do that day. And like every day it's like that. Every day.
I really think that here the only thing that hasn't or that's made them not jump into a big flurry of gun control stuff is the fact that 60 plus counties declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries.
And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be in one of those counties.
Me too, and I'm the one that sent the dude the form to start it.
That's awesome.
So, but it's one thing for your county board and or sheriff or both, ideally, but it has to be your local state's attorney to really have the teeth behind it.
The district attorney.
Yeah, and not all counties that are necessarily sanctuaries have had their local states, or what do you say? I said state's attorney.
One of the first things they tried to do when they come back in session was to make that illegal. That the counties couldn't ignore state law. Mm-hmm. And my response when I wrote them was, how can you do that when you're, as a state, ignoring federal law concerning marijuana and sanctuary?
Yeah. Let alone ignoring, what's that sanctuary city up north in the northeast corner that's allowing federal criminals they're criminals because they broke the law knowingly. Oh, they're immigrants. Oh, no, better, they're refugees. That sounds even better.
Well, we have a federal law. There's a federal law that prevents any state, county, city, or municipality of classifying an air gun as a firearm. Did you guys know that?
Nope.
No.
A BB gun or a paintball gun or an airsoft gun? Has that prevented Michigan or any of the other states that have like declared, or counties like Detroit or cities that have declared them firearms? You know what I mean? So,
I can explain why.
What?
It's the same reason that whenever a state or local municipality does something or doesn't do something that the federal government really wants them to do, is the federal government will hold the bait over their heads saying, if you don't do this one thing or these things, you will not receive one of the following: federal highway transportation funds for your roadways and bridges, and or your federal education money. Now, that's only a piece of what the schools get, but it's still a substantial piece.
There's also projects like we had to reinstall a new water tower because the first one that they put in, they were screwed on. Because I don't know the details, to be honest with you, but we got a federal grant to put in a new one here in this little town.
But money and holding it as bait, because after all, where'd they get that money from? They get that money from local groups, whether it's local from Idaho or local from Illinois. That money came from local individual citizens. It's not the government's money.
Well, I would just assume the feds use it to stop this liberal bullshit. If that works, I'm fine with that.
Well, what it is it's simple extortion. That's exactly what it, and it's pay to play. That's where that phrase comes from, by the way. Pay to play. If you want this, I got to get that. And it involves money.
Just imagine what Illinois would be if that didn't go on.
We might be like a western state in the plains.
We would be like California times Hawaii.
And although we're not high plains, we are still the plains, for those of you out there listening.
I still blame all of Illinois' faults on its close proximity to Canada.
We're not that close.
You're like right across the pond from them, so come on.
Well, Michigan's a hell of a lot closer. Ohio's a hell of a lot closer.
Got to go through Michigan and Wisconsin to get to freaking Canada from here.
Yeah.
A little bit of the UP in Michigan, but it's still Michigan.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been to Detroit, but I've heard the horror stories, and I have been to like Columbus. So I can obviously blame their faults on their close proximity to Canada also.
And what I find ironic is across from, for those that are not aware of where some of these other Canadian cities are, across from the crap hole known as Detroit is Windsor, Canada. Windsor does not have anywhere near to the scale of problems that Detroit has, yet the only difference is the bridge that connects them and the countries that they lie within.
Well,
I wouldn't say country. I would say more like their local municipality, right? Because Detroit's been a Democrat-controlled city for 40 years or something, right? So before that, it was like a utopia. It was all industrious and good and like awesome and jobs, and everyone was happy until Democrats got a hold of it, right?
California is very... Excuse me. Sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't say that Windsor's the utopia that it used to be either.
It isn't. You're absolutely right, and I was just drawing it for a point of comparison. But and Canada in general is very quickly turning into what Western Europe is today. Very quickly. I mean, they're right on our northern border, and we're going to have what's happening in France and Germany and other countries happening just to our north.
Yep. Well, and it's already been happening to our south.
Yes.
I'm not overly certain on that. I mean, I see what you're saying and it's coming, but I don't know how well Europe's going to hold up now. That's a pretty shaky bond at the moment because the countries that are wealthy are figuring out that they're the ones being asked to pay for everything.
Yep. And this, 1940s plan of the European nation, and people don't realize that, it didn't just start, 10 years ago or, that was a 2000 thing. No, it wasn't. It was an after World War II thing.
That's what Hitler wanted.
Yeah. And what amazes me is how, after World War II, how easily they were willing to, in the long term, because they knew that they would all be dead, give up the future sovereignty of their grandchildren.
And the thing is that all that's left is Russia. If they could get Russia into the EU, you'd have what Hitler wanted completely.
Well, other than unless it has an idea of going in there and corrupting the EU from within, I don't think Russia wants anything to do with it.
No, but I'm saying Russia is the only part that isn't part of Hitler's vision. His vision was he had the whole of Europe. And aside from Russia, he does.
And what the European Union flies in the face of is Woodrow Wilson. I realize a lot of people are saying, who the heck is that? Had this 14-point plan after World War I, and one of which was, when redefining the world, is that each area was required to have self-determination. And that's what the EU takes away from all of its participants, is self-determination.
Because if you talk to political pundits, Wilson was a horrible leftist. I never understood that thinking, because what was left back then evidently is considerably different than what's left today.
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt, yeah, he was pretty socialist, but the country kind of needed that at the time.
It just, like a drug addict who's addicted to heroin, collectively, we couldn't say, okay, that's enough. We just had, death by 1,000 paper cuts, except, well, we need this little thing here we need to tuck into the program. And this, we need to tuck this other thing into the little program. And it grew, and it grew, and now it's, the monster.
But it went back to normal America right after World War II. We did not have to deal with austerity like Europe did.
Correct.
England, man, those people paid for that shit for 15 years.
Yep.
So I don't see where the freaking libs get their ideas that that's functional.
Part of it, I think, is an ignorance, because we've never had to fight a war on this country, in this territory, other than with the natives and the Civil War. I mean, with an outside power. So we have what I'll call a cultural ignorance that, well, those are things in far off places that don't, wouldn't happen here, of course.
Hey, now, people, you need to look up your history, because the White House has been burned down by the Brits in 1812. In the War of 1812.
No, playing the devil's advocate. That's ancient history.
I know it.
Wasn't that Canada?
It was the Brits.
It was Brits, but they owned
in combination with various supporters.
People, if you think about it, what Britain did in history is amazing. They controlled the whole damn world from a little island.
Yeah, an island nation control. I saw it just yesterday or the day before. It was, I believe, it was 25% of the landmass of the world they controlled.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal amount.
I mean, and if you compare that to Rome, of course, there's technology differences, but still, that's massive.
Well, Rome owned all they could feasibly reach.
Right, and I think to a similar extent is the same is true of England. I mean, due to technology limitations and things like that, and how far ships could sail without refueling and stay out there with logistics and food for the people to eat and stuff like that were on board the ships, they took over as much of the world as they could.
I think the only stopper for them would have been coal. The upper parts of the Earth and the lowest parts, because hell, they were from America to Australia. They had,
and that's why countries, especially island countries, i.e., Japan or England, their number one thing when they reach outside their country is resources. When you have an island nation, you are probably going to be short some sort of resources, whether it's coal, whether it's food, whether it's cheap labor, you're going to be short something. Or if you're coming from a politically imposed closed system such as China, you find ways around the world to get access to resources that you may not have sufficient of for your future needs. Which is why they're in South America, they're in Africa, of course they're all over Asia, but they're also making deals with the Canadians and the Mexicans, and I mean they're doing it differently than the Russians. They're doing it via finances. The One Road, One Belt program. I realize some of you may have never heard that, but you might want to Google it to get a better idea as to what that really means. One Belt, One Road, China.
China is pretty damn rich in resources, or they were. Why Japan, English don't. Japan tried to invade them for like 30 damn years.
But they also have, because their long-range plans weren't working out so well, i.e. the ghost cities, but they had to keep people employed to keep their economy moving, and they became so addicted to making the goods, the cheap goods that the U.S. wanted, that suddenly they became the opposite end of dependency as far as the drug dealer. They were the drug dealer rather than the drug taker. We're the taker of the cheap stuff. But they became so dependent on us financially for buying their cheap stuff.
Well, that pretty much is the basis of capitalism.
Yeah, and it makes them vulnerable because they're not the only source of cheap labor.
That's one of the reasons why this freaking trade war is likely to be effective, is because they depend on us to buy this stuff so much. If it gets to where we can buy American stuff for similar amounts, people are just going to say, throw a finger in the air at China.
Yeah, I saw a chart yesterday, and I didn't think to bookmark it for today's show, but it showed the trade differences between them producing and us buying, and things that we're producing that they're buying, and the massive discrepancy between the two. So when you hear about 50 billion of this is one thing or another, that's just a small amount. That won't even get us close to 50-50.
And I think the big sticking point is the intellectual property rights.
And I would agree, because both them and Russia have a long history of commercial, industrial, and military spies and theft. And if you can't buy the technology, then steal it. I mean, you start with the easy thing because money is easy to make.
Okay, but here's the thing with that. Okay, so Russia's always been into not only sabotage, but stealing stuff. So basically, their space shuttle was an exact copy of our space shuttle, right? So you remember the supersonic jet, the Concorde? Russia came out with a Concorde and flew it 2 months before the official Concorde flew. Okay, and it was all through spies and stuff like that. But we're keen on this stuff. So we set one of these Russian spies up. They were trying to figure out the tires at the Concorde, the rubber that the Concorde tires were made out of. So a Russian spy hired this guy who worked at the airport where the Concorde was like being tested at, go and scrape rubber off the tarmac after the Concorde landed, so he could smuggle it back to Russia so they could figure out this special rubber they were using that could handle that weight and speed and everything, right? Well, they knew it. The guy was a spy, so they set him up. They gave him this rubber that was the consistency of bubble gum. Okay? So can you imagine Russian scientists spending millions of dollars and stuff trying to research this rubber and all this stuff, and and figure out how they were using this rubber to make a tire, right? So the amount of misdirection and like rabbit holes they send them down, like that's all part of that espionage, spy versus spy game. And
Right.
we've been playing that with the Russians forever. And I think that's I think that's funny as hell. I think that's absolutely fascinating that we get back to them like that. We basically give them bubble gum, like, oh, here's what the tires are made out of,
Imagine the first time they landed on those tires.
right?
But there's a reason that traditionally, let's say after the F-14 and F-15 debuted, that within about 5 or so years, and it's not just the laws of aerodynamics, that there would be an extremely similar model come rolling off the Russian line.
Military secrets are extremely fleeting, just like industrial secrets.
Oh yes.
Well, that's one of the most leading conspiracy theories that I believe in about UFOs has to do with it's just it was all just a U.S. government program to mislead Russians to make them think that like, oh, Americans has contact with aliens, right? Like that the whole thing was basically a Cold War thing, set up to make the Russians believe that we might have technology that we really don't have and stuff like that. And I think that's probably more plausible than really aliens crashing in Roswell. like the whole thing was just like misdirection and misleading and false information to Russians.
I don't
Do you
know
think
about
we're alone in
Roswell.
the universe?
Go ahead, Tony.
Do you think we're alone in the universe?
Oh, hell no. No, it's been mathematically impossible.
Because what I was going to say is the UFO thing did not end with the Cold War. It continues.
Well, no, I know, but they think that it's still being used not only for other superpowers, not only for China, for Russia, that it's just, misdirection and making them think that we have, super special technology, like where they think like, oh, where just a stupid citizen might think it's aliens. Russia's like, oh, it's government technology. They have like these special aircraft that can do
Right.
these special things. So I'm not saying that we're trying to trick Russia into believing that there's aliens, but trying to trick Russia into believing we have technology that's far past than what we really have.
Yeah, because you can't keep putting prototypes up in the air that sooner or later another military jet or a commercial jet might not get a glimpse of erratic behavior.
Like we have built planes and have like taken pictures of planes that weren't even real prototypes or real things that we were working on, but just to let that information leak out and get back to Russia to misdirect them and stuff. So like that was such a common thing that it wouldn't surprise me at all if that whole UFO thing really started with just that. Just let's screw with Russia.
There you go. This is just for funny. Why do you think they stopped the actual space travel program at NASA?
Oh, why is that?
Found the Stargate, Cheyenne Mountain.
Yep. Makes sense.
Stardate what?
Stargate.
Yeah, they got a Stargate in Cheyenne Mountain. Damn, come on. You
Oh,
never heard
okay.
about the Stargate?
Gotcha. I thought you said date with a D.
No, that's Star Trek, and I have no idea how they configure their dates because it don't make any damn sense.
It's all done on the spin of like a quasar star. All the like when they're like, oh, star date 2.4156. That's all done. Like that's all a real time measurement based on like if we were to ever actually contact another civilization, like that's how we would communicate and work with time with them. It would be based off of like something repeatable like a quasar star. That'd be the same for both of us. Because chances are they wouldn't be on a 24-hour day like we are,
Came from a home planet that was 72 hours cycles or something, and their biology would reflect that.
Yep.
Well, we're getting a little bit off topic here, so
Yeah, and it's getting about 3 hours into it. I think we're going to wrap it up. It's been a good show today. You guys have any shout outs you want to give?
The morning and lunch lobbies going, I'm sure.
Yep, go check out Mr. Knives. He's has a lobby over on Gun Channels every single day. You can go over there, join in, participate, listen. It's posted over there on the front page of Gun Channels. Daniel, you got anything you want to shout out? Anything coming up?
Well, actually, I was gonna, this is not really a gun thing, but I was gonna actually go do a father-son camping thing this weekend. Except it looks like we got storms coming in the area, so I'm kind of bummed out. That may get rained out.
Oh, come on, you can camp in the rain. Like camping in the rain's not that bad.
Well, yeah, when I was in the army and I had no choice, I could, but now it's called leisure. Not have to, because the Russians or the Cubans are coming over the hill.
Just go camp by a lake and then go fishing, because the best fishing's always in the rain. There you go.
We're supposed to be having 3 days in the 80s coming up, at least here.
Yep, and that warm temperature is bringing the storms. Hopefully it'll change forecast, but we're only a couple days away from Friday, and it ain't looking good.
I need to put in my window units probably later today or tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, Tony, that's what I was gonna do. I have 2 of them. I was gonna put my first one in today in my bedroom just so I can sleep at night, right? And then I'll probably put the other one in for the like the living room and kitchen. I'll probably put that one in later.
Now, do you have your wife give you a hand with that, Tony?
Nope.
I mean, because that's fairly heavy for you to be lifting up and.
Oh, it ain't a big deal.
Well, yeah, it wasn't for a big deal when we were 20 and didn't have health issues.
I just took the one out to break into this garage when I locked my keys in here. Actually, I'm really pleased with my freaking hanging furnace because I am using about 25% of the electricity I was running these space heaters. So much
those space heaters really suck the power.
So much so that my utility bill, I am on monthly, level payment. It went down $23 a month.
Is your ceiling gas or electric?
Electric.
Okay.
But it's an actual hanging furnace.
Have you thought of putting in a, even if it's a false ceiling, just something to keep your the heat in from rather than going up into the rafters?
Insulated, Daniel.
Oh, it is. I can't remember the specifics of your setup there.
It's all covered with particle board.
Okay.
They insulated the heck out of this garage.
Well, what about like from 8 foot up?
8 foot's the height of the ceiling.
Right, but do you have anything covering that, or does it keep going up? And can you see the roof?
No, it's got a ceiling in here, and then there's
insulation.
There's insulation in that ceiling, and then it's covered on top, so you can store stuff up there.
That's the part I don't remember. I guess that's why. Okay, you answered the question. Thank you.
If you remember the walls, the ceiling looks the same.
Yeah, I remember the walls. I just didn't remember the ceiling.
Except there's cobwebs on the ceiling.
Well, it's a garage.
I was pleased with that. That was a nice surprise for this month.
So anyway, that's all I got, Dead Horse.
Good day, everybody.
Now I'm going to end this with a quote by our godfather here, Jeff Cooper. Pick up a rifle and you changed instantly from a subject to a citizen.